A young woman lives amid family chaos. Her mother is terminally ill, her father is cold and distant, and her younger sister is rebellious. The family situation only worsens, leading to a tragic fate, a bad and inevitable end. After reincarnating, Ridbalda decides to change his destiny. He promises to live rightly and save his family from collapse. Using his new powers, he impresses his younger sister and earns respect. Determined, he declares that he will change the future. During a work break, Kanda recalls that a colleague recommended an anime game to him days ago. He had agreed to try it, though with some hesitation. Now she approaches him, curious to know what he thought of the game she suggested. Kanda excitedly tells her that he played the entire game and had a lot of fun, becoming addicted to the character training mode. Even though he's exhausted and has dark circles under his eyes, he is proud to have completed everything. Despite his busy routine as a salesman with parties and working late, he is content with his simple life, enjoying his games and anime. After working so hard, Kanda's body couldn't take it anymore, and he collapsed in the middle of the street. As he lost consciousness, the last thing that crossed his mind was the image of his mother, who had passed away a few years ago. His body had reached its limit. Kanda wakes up in a strange bed, confused. As he opens his eyes, he notices an unfamiliar ceiling and tries to understand what happened. He remembers fainting while waiting for the light to change. Now, not knowing where he is, he begins to realize that something has drastically changed. When he sees himself in the mirror, Kanda panics upon noticing that his body is that of a child. Confused, he notices his small hands and doesn't recognize the face reflected. Soon a maid rushes in and calls him Rid-sama, leaving him even more surprised as he realizes he has reincarnated as someone else. Kanda, now in the body of a child, confirms that he is physically fine, but he is confused by the many unfamiliar people around him. A man introduces himself as Garn, the butler, and says that everyone was worried after he fainted in the garden. Kanda, trying to stay calm, thanks him and apologizes for causing concern. Kanda tries to act normally, but he notices that his words surprise the others. Garn formally thanks him, asking him to continue calling him by his name. Confused by the entire situation and the noble treatment he is receiving, Kanda begins to feel overwhelmed and unable to understand what's happening around him. Kanda starts to feel a strong headache as unknown memories flood his mind. He tries to understand what's happening and realizes that he is now Rid-Baldaya. Even though he knew he was Kanda Hajime, an ordinary employee, he accepts that he has reincarnated and begins to remember the new identity he has assumed. Kanda finally understands the situation. He has reincarnated within the otome game Tokirella that he played before. There was a secondary character named Rid-Baldia, a follower of a villainous noblewoman. Now he realizes that he has been reborn as this character, a villainous extra in the heroine's story. Rid rings the bell to call the maid, wanting to better understand his current situation. He feigns nonchalance and asks about his age, but ends up making a mistake by saying he's 7 years old. The maid corrects him, saying he recently turned 6. Realizing his blunder, Rid tries to cover it up, but he begins to feel the difficulty of maintaining his new identity. Rid takes the opportunity to ask about the country and his family. The maid explains that they are in the Magnolia Empire, near territories of other races. He lives with his father Rainer, mother Nunnally, and younger sister Melody. The Baldia family is noble but neutral in political disputes. With all the information, Rid confirms he has indeed reincarnated in the world of the game Tokarella. Rid tries to be kind to the maid, but notices she is afraid of him. Confused, he begins to question the behavior of the former Rid. Suddenly, strong and intense memories take over his mind, causing him to fall to the ground, gasping as everyone around him runs in fear, calling for him. Rid realizes that his former self probably mistreated others, which explains the maid's fear. With a gentle smile, he apologizes and asks her name. She introduces herself as Danai, and he compliments her, saying it's a beautiful name. Rid's sweet demeanor surprises and moves her, and she responds eagerly that it will be a pleasure to serve him. In the morning, Danai wakes Rid with an excited smile. Still a bit sleepy, he freezes when he sees her so close in her maid uniform. When she offers to help him get dressed, he hurriedly refuses, embarrassed and trying to hide that he was mesmerized by her appearance. During breakfast, Rid is impressed by the luxury of noble life, but finds it strange to be alone at such a large table. When he asks where the others are, Garn explains that his father is in the capital. His mother is sick and resting, and his younger sister is elsewhere in the mansion. Rid plans to visit Melody later to see how she's doing. Rid goes to his mother Nunali Baldia's room, accompanied by Danai. He thinks about the fact that in the game his mother was not even mentioned by name, which makes him curious about who she really is. As he reaches the door, he feels a slight nervousness about what kind of person he will find. As he approaches the door to his mother's room, Rid feels an odd discomfort, as if his body is rejecting the place. Danai comments that he has avoided visiting her since she fell ill, which surprises him. He himself feels as if he hasn't seen her in a long time. The feeling that something happened between them lingers in the air until a voice from the other side of the door calls him to enter. Upon entering the room, Rid is greeted with a gentle smile from his mother, Nunali Baldia. Lying in bed, she expresses her happiness at seeing him, showing sincere affection despite the time they've been apart. Seeing his mother's smile, an intense wave of emotions suddenly overwhelms Rid. He is struck by unknown feelings and ends up kneeling, not fully understanding what happened. With misty eyes, he wonders what it means, clearly touched by something deep tied to the past relationship between Rid and Nunali. When he sees his mother coughing, Rid rushes to her, asking if she is okay. Nunali reassures him, saying she is happy to see him. She thanks him for the visit and feels relieved to know he's okay after fainting in the garden. With a calmer and more affectionate atmosphere, they exchange sincere words, trying to make up for the time they've been apart. Rid smiles confidently and says that everything is fine, proudly stating that he is the son of the Marchioness and Marquis. He bids her farewell with affection, promising to visit her again. Nunali smiles back, visibly happy with her son's change in attitude. As he leaves, Rid thinks that if he has Garn by his side, he can handle everything from here on out. Determined to understand his mother's condition, Rid presses Garn to tell him about Nunali's illness. Despite the insistence, Garn initially refuses. But upon seeing Rid's seriousness and firmness, he gives in, asking him to keep the secret before revealing the truth behind the illness. Garn finally reveals the name of the disease, Mana Deficiency Syndrome. Rid is shocked to hear this, processing the weight of the information, and understanding that his mother's condition is serious and rare, tied to the vital energy of that world. Garn explains that Mana Deficiency Syndrome causes the vital energy, called mana, to no longer regenerate. Over time, the body weakens until death. It is an incurable disease, feared and known as a death sentence. Rid realizes that this condition is the same one from the game Tokarella, and decides to go to the mansion library to find more information, knowing that the books in his room are insufficient. Rid meets Melody, his younger sister, who appears curious and shy. She asks if she can stay with him, and if he won't be mad. Surprised by her sweetness, Rid smiles and invites her to join him, even offering to read an illustrated book together. Their connection begins to strengthen. Melody becomes excited when she hears that Rid will read to her and quickly runs to close the door as he asked. Sitting together, Rid begins reading a children's book aloud, and Melody listens, enchanted. The moment is simple, but full of affection, showing the sibling bond growing with lightness and care. As Rid spends time with Melody, his memories begin to return. He remembers that when his sister was born, he adored her and was filled with joy. But after their mother fell ill, something changed. His anguish and fear turned into anger, some of which was directed at Melody. Now he understands that he was just a child trying to protect his own heart, spreading his anxiety without realizing it. Rid recalls how the distance between him and Melody grew over time, to the point where they no longer shared meals. Now sitting together, he apologizes. Melody responds lightly, changing the subject by saying that he shouldn't sleep in the garden. They laugh together, exchanging affectionate teasing, and Rid realizes how smart and lovable Melody is. The bond between them begins to heal. With a loving smile, Melody says that Rid can call her Mel, just like their mother does, but only because he's special. Rid is surprised and touched by the gesture, thanks her, and promises to cherish the nickname. Melody falls asleep, leaning against Rid, and he is surprised by the peaceful scene. Danai approaches with a gentle look and carefully covers Melody. Garn appears and asks if Rid was with her, and he simply signals for silence. Rid tells Garn that he read an illustrated book to Melody until she fell asleep. Garn smiles contentedly and asks him to continue taking good care of his sister. With a proud and warm smile, Rid responds that, of course he will. After all, she's his little sister. Garn comments that since Rid fainted in the garden, he seems like a completely different person. Surprised and nervous, Rid tries to hide it, thinking that he hasn't changed that much. But as he reflects, he realizes that compared to the old Rid, cold and distant, his new attitude really stands out. He feels the weight of maintaining this change, but he is determined to keep it. After reconnecting with his mother and Melody, Rid begins to understand his true purpose. In the game Tokarella, he was an accomplice to the villainess, and ended up being condemned, exiled, or even killed. Now, with the chance to change everything, he decides to avoid that fate at any cost. To do so, he must act immediately, with wisdom and strategy. Rid formulates a plan to change his destiny. He needs to make friends with the characters who, in the game, would be condemned, exiled, or killed, and avoid falling into these paths. But since he is far from the capital, where these characters appear, he will have to manage on his own. To do this, he decides to train his skills and earn money, realizing that he is solely dependent on his own strength to survive and change his future. Rid reflects on the emotions he felt when he saw his mother sick and realizes that they were the emotions of the old Rid, deep sadness and helplessness. Seeing his mother weakening destroyed him inside, which ended up affecting his bonds with the family. Now he understands that if he can restore these bonds, he may not only avoid condemnation, but also live an honest and happy life. Rid remembers his past life, feeling regret for not appreciating his own mother while she was still alive. The pain of seeing her pass away and not being able to do anything about it left a deep mark on him. Now, determined not to repeat this mistake, he vows never to carry such regret again. With determination and a firm heart, Rid decides that he will save his mother at any cost. With a book in hand, he prepares to start searching for information on possible treatments. Full of conviction, he promises he will find a cure. Rid presents himself proudly. Now reincarnated as a handsome young man with silver hair and purple eyes, he discovers that he has an impressive ability. He can memorize every book he reads, word by word. With this talent, he feels ready to face any challenge. While studying in the library, Rid comes across a book with familiar information, plants, gems, and minerals that also existed in his past life. He realizes that he can use this knowledge to make money and fund his plans. Excited by this possibility, he begins to devise strategies, but his attention is interrupted by the news that his father, Rainer Sama, has returned. Rid prepares for an important moment, his reunion with his father, Marquis Rainer Baldia, since his reincarnation. With his heart racing, he heads to the room where his father awaits. Although nervous, he is determined to talk to him about something important. Rid replies to his father that he is fine now, despite having fainted in the garden. Seriously, he sits down and says he has 2 important questions to ask. His father, attentive, encourages him to speak. Rid then prepares to make his first request. Rid makes his first request to his father. He wants permission to learn magic and martial arts while studying. He recalls that in the original game, Rid was a weak character at first, but with intense training, he could become absurdly powerful, even able to use all types of magic. Despite being a background character, Rid stood out in free mode, which led the protagonist to use him in challenges. Rid firmly states that he wants to get stronger to help his mother. Even though he hesitated when he saw her so weak, he realized that lamenting wouldn't solve anything. With this, he convinces his father that he is mentally prepared to train in magic and martial arts. After getting approval to train in magic and martial arts, Rid makes his second request. He wants funds that he can use freely. He says he has many product ideas and wants to bring them to life. His father, surprised, questions whether he truly wants sponsorship without presenting a proposal. Rid bets on the father-son bond and his enthusiasm to convince the Marquis to invest in him. Even though his father finds it risky and a large sum for a child, he agrees and promises to set aside the funds. Excited by the response, Rid thanks him and takes the opportunity to ask for one more favor. Rid asks his father that they start having meals together, saying it's a shame that neither he nor Mel have much contact with him. His father reacts surprised but considers the idea. In the end, we see Rid and Mel together at the table, smiling, showing that relationships are starting to improve. During the family meal, his father asks his daughter if he can also call her Mel, the affectionate nickname. Melody is completely surprised and drops her utensils. The situation leaves the room silent as everyone at the table watches in anticipation of her reaction. Melody firmly shouts that her father cannot call her Mel, saying that only her mother and brother can do that. The reaction catches everyone by surprise. Her father looks visibly affected, while the maids try to hold back laughter. To lighten the mood, Rid changes the subject and says that he wants to inspect the territory. His father responds with a very well and orders a carriage to be prepared. Rid becomes excited when he learns that he will have a night escort and thanks them. The two assigned to accompany him introduce themselves, Rubens and Diana. Inside the carriage, Rid observes the landscape and comments that the Baldia territory is called borderland because it is far from the capital, but has plenty of fertile land, which favors cultivation and trade. He remembers that the idea of planting olive trees came from his father. Rid looks out the window of the carriage and comments that, despite being called borderland, the region is not desolate. Diana warns that they will soon arrive at their destination. Rid then thinks that he is not here just to sightsee. He has a goal. With the money his father gave him, he wants to achieve something important in this city, the largest in Baldia territory. Rid arrives in the city and is impressed by the bustle and beauty of the place, exclaiming a lively, "Wow." Diana warns him to stay close, as there are many people around. He agrees with a smile. The group walks to a specific building where Diana, with a confused expression, questions if this is really the right place. Rid responds with a shy laugh, showing that he is confident in his plan. Rid confidently enters the Christie Company, accompanied by Diana and Rubens. A receptionist with cat ears greets them cheerfully. Rid is surprised by her appearance, but quickly refocuses. He explains that he sent a letter to Christie-san a few days ago. The receptionist understands and says she will check with her master right away. Rid meets Christie Saffron, the leader of the Christie Company. She introduces herself kindly, and the cat-eared receptionist accompanies her. Rid mentally confirms that she is exactly as Garn described, the only elf in Baldia territory and also a businesswoman. Christie then invites Rid to the guest room, and he accepts with a "okay." Rid and Christie greet each other formally and exchange pleasantries. Rid makes it clear that he wants a private conversation, so he asks his bodyguards to stay outside. Christie asks if he is sure, but Rid confirms. He then says that he wants to get straight to the point, and Christie agrees with a very well. Rid asks Christie if she knows about skin lotion and hair conditioner. The scene then shifts to a few days earlier, when he was reading a book. Upon seeing a familiar plant, he is surprised to discover that aloe also exists in this world. He comments on lotions made from aloe and wonders if these products exist here. The maid, curious, asks what skin lotion is. Rid explains to Danai what skincare is, saying it is used after washing the face to keep the skin hydrated. She is surprised, never having thought of it before. Rid pretends that he just thought something like this would be useful. Later, he looks at the field and thinks about the large amount of aloe growing near the mansion, remembering that it even heals wounds. He begins to mentally plan something related to it. Rid has the idea of creating lotions and conditioners using aloe and olives from the territory. He recalls the videos he watched before reincarnating and begins to develop prototypes inspired by them. When he presents everything to Christie, she confirms that she has never heard of something like this, reinforcing that it is a new and promising idea. This excites Rid to continue with his plans. Rid eagerly reveals that he brought the prototypes with him, surprising Christie. She is impressed that he has already developed the products and, curious, asks to test them. Rid allows her without hesitation, and she begins to apply the lotion to her hands with care. Christie tests the product and is amazed, enthusiastically praising it. She repeats several times that it is very good and becomes emotional, saying she had been worried about her dry skin for some time and never imagined something like this could exist. Excited, she affirms that the product will sell very well. Rid smiles, happy that she liked it. After testing the product, Christie becomes excited and asks for it to be marketed. Rid leaves the conditioner with her and says he still has many ideas to make money. Then they discuss their next plans. Rid asks Christie to look for 2 medicinal ingredients used to treat mana deficiency: root grass and moonlight grass. Christie recalls how she doubted the content of the letter she received, thinking it was absurd that a child would make such a serious business proposal. Now, seeing Rid in person, she considers him someone intimidating in a good way. She reveals that she created her new company far from the saffron company of her family, and initially thought she was just taking care of the Marquise's son. Emma comments that Christie seems to be having fun, and Christie responds that they will be busy for a while. Rid returns excited and confirms that Christie accepted his proposal. He says that now he will be able to develop various projects with the Christie company. The knights celebrate with him, but Rid knows he cannot rest. He remembers that if he does nothing, his fate could be exile or even execution. Therefore, he needs to make enough money to live on his own. Rid sees a girl alone and wonders if she is lost. He approaches carefully and asks if everything is okay. The girl, a bit surprised, responds with a timid "ah" while holding her cloak, still wary. The shy girl reveals that she got separated from the person she came with. Rid, already suspicious of the situation, introduces himself as a member of the Marquise's family and offers to help. He asks if she remembers where the separation happened and offers to guide her. Before they can continue, a man appears calling for the girl, relieved to have found her. The man thanks Rid for his help, saying it was very helpful. Rid responds with a smile, saying it is natural to help when one sees a girl in trouble. The girl, touched by his kind words, shows a surprised and emotional expression. The knights accompanying Rid also silently notice her reaction. An elf appears relieved to find the princess safe, saying she was very worried. However, when called princess, the girl sitting on the bed reacts confused, not understanding what they are talking about. The elf, now sitting and blushing, thinks with regret that she should have asked the boy's name who helped her. One of the women present suspects that she is in love, which makes the elf even more embarrassed. Meanwhile, Rubens comments to Rid that he should have asked the girl's name too. Rid falls asleep during the carriage ride, leaning against Diana. Rubens watches him and calls out softly, noticing he is sleeping. Diana looks visibly enchanted by the scene. Rubens decides they should return to the mansion while he sleeps. Rid is informed of the arrival of his personal tutor, Sandra. She appears with a confident presence, formally introducing herself and saying she will begin teaching him magic starting that day. Sandra formally introduces herself as Sandra Ernest, magic tutor. Rid responds excitedly, saying it's a pleasure to meet her. When Sandra asks if he has ever used magic before, Rid replies that he has never used or seen it, only read about it. Internally, he can hardly wait for the training, remembering that if he's right, he should be able to use all the elements. Sandra begins explaining magic, saying that in order to use it, one must transform internal life force into mana, which will be the source of magical power. She states that this is not an easy task, but assures Rid that she will guide him through every step of the process. With confidence, she asks him to leave everything in her hands. Sandra takes Rid to the training field to show a practical example of magic, saying that this could help him imagine better how it works. Rid notices how much she loves magic. Upon arriving at the site, Sandra prepares confidently to demonstrate her magical power. Sandra jumps into the air and summons a powerful fire spell. With confidence, she conjures a flame sphere and shoots a large fireball at the ground, causing an impressive explosion as a demonstration of magic for Rid. Rid runs excitedly towards Sandra, completely impressed. He praises the spell enthusiastically, saying it was so cool, and calling her Sandra Sensei. Surprised by the affectionate title, Sandra reacts not knowing what to say. Sandra becomes embarrassed when called Sensei, but soon cheers up and shows another trick. She can cast magic without reciting the incantation, just by imagining it perfectly. Rid finds this amazing. Then, she proposes they start generating mana. Rid responds eagerly, ready to try. Sandra explains that with the right image in mind, one can use magic without needing to recite anything. Rid gets excited by the demonstration. She then says it's still too early for him to do that, so the training begins with the basics. Generating mana. Rid prepares with determination. Rid begins to despair for not being able to generate mana, thinking that maybe he has no talent at all. Sandra approaches and says there is a trick that can help with this process. Though skeptical, he agrees to try. She then asks for his hands and prepares to apply the method. Rid begins to feel a strong shock throughout his body during the mana conversion method. He panics, thinking his body will break. Sandra, with a calm smile, tells him not to worry. It's just a sensation. Nothing will actually happen. Rid begins to feel something strange being pulled from inside him through his palms, a new and uncomfortable sensation. Sandra tells him to hold on a little longer while he thinks he's being electrocuted. Despite the discomfort, Rid suspects the teacher is having fun with this, thinking she's doing it on purpose. Rid collapses to the floor, exhausted, feeling like he's been through torture. Sandra says the process is over and apologizes with a smile. She explains that she used a method called forced mana conversion awareness to make the process faster. Rid is outraged that she didn't warn him how intense it would be beforehand. Rid calls Sandra a sadist for doing it on purpose, but she just enjoys herself. Now that he is aware of the mana source inside him, Sandra explains how to convert vitality into mana. With more confidence, Rid begins to follow the steps. Feel the source, try to convert it, and focus on compressing it with force. Exactly as she instructed, Sandra guides Rid to move the mana to his fist. Imagine the desired spell, and remember the fireball she demonstrated earlier. He follows the steps seriously, focusing the mana in his hand and visualizing the spell with total focus, determined to create his own fireball and hit the target. Rid casts his magic confidently, shouting, "Fireball!" while forming a powerful flame sphere. The energy flows forcefully through the hall, surprising Sandra, who watches with a shocked expression. Rid celebrates excitedly that he managed to cast the spell, calling for Sandra. She explains that normally it's difficult, even after learning to convert mana. However, she is impressed by his ability, saying that his imagination is incredible and that he might be a genius. Rid becomes excited seeing that all his fireball shots hit the target. He even tries to cast the magic without chanting the incantation, and succeeds. Sandra is stunned and calls him a genius. However, he soon runs out of mana and admits that he got too excited. They then decide to go study. Rid asks if there's a way to recover mana, but Sandra explains that for now, it can only be recovered naturally. Even though several countries have tried to create something for this, no one has succeeded yet. She also explains that the more mana is used, the larger the reserve becomes. She then starts explaining the two types of magic. Special magic, like the forced conversion technique she invented, and attribute magic, which requires the conversion of mana into elements like fire, water, wind, etc. Sandra says there is a wide variety of magic and that, in the future, Rid will also be able to create his own. She suggests that he continue practicing mana conversion. Excited by the idea of learning more, Rid dedicates himself and runs motivated, thinking it's fun to be able to do more things. Meanwhile, one of the guards watches him, calling for him with concern. Rubens observes Rid's strange movements and asks what he is doing. Rid responds that he is just warming up, but Rubens has never seen exercises like this. Rid realizes that in this world, the concept of gymnastics doesn't exist and wonders if he's raising suspicions. Still, he thinks he can't abandon his habits. Rubens hands him a wooden sword and warns that today, he will teach martial arts. Rid remembers that his reflexes were poor in his past life and lacks confidence, but he knows he can't avoid it. Rubens praises Rid, saying he has talent, and proposes a combat training session. Rid gets excited by the compliment. Rubens tells him to assume a stance and start swinging the sword. After a few test strikes, Rubens positions himself and says for Rid to attack him as he wishes. Rid charges at Rubens with enthusiasm, but soon notices something strange. During the attack, he feels his body reacting in an unexpected way, as if it were moving on its own. Confused, he wonders what is happening. Rid feels light and energetic, as if his body is more agile than ever. He realizes how fun it is to swing the sword, and begins to think that, in this new world, his physical abilities are naturally high. This makes him believe that perhaps he has talent for everything here. Rid is tired but receives sincere compliments from Rubens, who says he might even become stronger than Rainer in the future. Even so, Rid feels frustrated for not landing a single blow during the training. When he hears that Rubens is Diana's childhood friend, he has an idea. It seems like he's going to do something to get back at the humiliation. Out of nowhere, Rid teases Rubens, asking if he likes Diana. Rubens is totally caught off guard and blushes, which only fuels Rid to continue. He says that everyone in the castle talks about how Rubens doesn't make a move with Diana because he's too cowardly to confess. Rubens tries to deny it, but his face gives everything away. Rubens collapses to the ground after the teasing, unable to say anything. Rid is confused, thinking he might have touched on a sensitive point. Meanwhile, Diana shows up, asking what's going on. When she sees the situation, she immediately understands and calls for Rid, who is already walking away, concerned. Diana comments that Rubens sometimes reacts in a strange way and ends up like this. Curious, she asks what Rid said to make him like this. Rid hesitates but ends up answering that Rubens is a coward when it comes to her. The mood changes instantly, and he realizes that maybe he overdid it, feeling the atmosphere grow heavy. Furious, Diana approaches with a menacing aura, saying she will have a serious talk with Rid later. Rid imagines her as a demon, panicking. Rubens, for his part, panics when he sees her, and immediately gets slapped. Not understanding anything, he asks what she is doing here. Rubens accepts that training with Rid is over for today, clearly intimidated by Diana. She, smiling with a threatening air, says she has something to discuss with Rid, which he nervously confirms. As Diana moves away with him, Rid realizes that she has immediately climbed to the top of his list of people not to mess with. He also learns a valuable lesson: never interfere in other people's romantic matters. Mel praises Rid for his skill in reading illustrated books, especially when he does different voices for each character. She has a great time listening to these readings. Rid, on the other hand, admits that lately he feels pressured to perform the voices, as if Mel would complain if he didn't do it. Even with a dry throat, he continues, happy to see Mel content. His mother praises Rid's talent, comparing him to a true actor. Mel, excited, boasts that she encouraged him to do it, and asks to be praised too. The scene ends with a warm moment between mother and daughter while Rid watches everything in silence. It is revealed that Rid's mother suffers from a serious illness called mana deficiency, which is fatal but not hereditary. Few people in the family know about it. Though she seemed fine at first, she begins to show signs of weakness and decides to end the conversation, saying she has a visitor. Rid notices that she is very pale, and Mel cheerfully bids her goodbye. Chris shows Rid 2 bottles and says that the commercialization is going well. Since he delivered the prototypes of the lotion and conditioner, they have met several times. Thanks to her, everything is progressing successfully, from cultivating the ingredients to preparing the factories. Rid is visibly excited about the new developments. Rid praises Chris for her competence, and she replies that everything was only possible thanks to his financial support. Now the next step is to increase production. Chris explains the importance of teaching the public about healthcare and the correct use of products, highlighting that different skin types and species require special attention. Rid is impressed with her knowledge. Rid thinks of ways to prevent counterfeit products from harming people's health. To this end, he sets 3 main measures: customer service with guidance and a return policy, the creation of a logo using the Baldia family crest, and managing stores with the help of 2 reliable companies. He wants to ensure safety and trust for all consumers. Chris is surprised to hear that Rid wants her to be the spokeswoman for the products. With a confident smile, he responds that she is the perfect choice for this. A few days earlier, Rid had spoken with a man who suggested presenting the products to the imperial couple. Instead of going personally, Rid decides to send Chris as a representative, as she is elegant and beautiful, qualities he believes better convey the cosmetics proposal. He fears that his youthful appearance will make them not take his words on beauty seriously. Rid believes that once they see how Chris looks even more beautiful with the products, many men will want to gift them to their wives and daughters. The man agrees to the idea and says he will take the company representative with him to the capital. Surprised by Rid's maturity, he wonders if this really came from a 6-year-old child. Meanwhile, Chris, despite feeling the pressure, promises to do her best. Rid observes the moonlight grass, a rare medicinal plant he asks Chris to find. He believes that by processing it correctly, he can slow the progression of his mother's illness. With this, he shows how much he is secretly working to protect her. Chris informs him that she hasn't found the root grass yet, but asks for patience and promises to continue searching. Meanwhile, Rid organizes the production of the cosmetics. The ingredients will be grown in his territory, and partner companies will take care of manufacturing, transportation, sales, and customer service. Part of the profits will go to him. With that settled, he decides to focus on the next product. Days later, Chris and Rid's father leave for the capital to present the cosmetics to the imperial couple. Rid prepares a mana potion using the moonlight grass. Although he knows it won't fully cure his mother, he believes it will serve as a temporary solution until he can find something definitive. However, a problem arises. He lacks sufficient knowledge in pharmacology. A man then suggests that he ask Sandra, an expert on the subject, for help. Rid shows Sandra the medicinal herb he found. Surprised, she asks what it is. He explains that the plant has mana restoration properties. The revelation shocks Sandra, who realizes the value of the herb. Sandra immediately recognizes the plant as the rare moonlight grass and is shocked that it really exists. Excited, she tells Rid that she was once the director of a research lab in the capital, where she studied mana potions, exactly what he intends to use it for. Rid is surprised by the coincidence. Sandra recalls her past in the capital, where she was appointed director of a lab due to her passion for magic and her vast knowledge. She worked with elite mages to develop a mana potion. However, something strange happened. Supplies that should have arrived the previous week still hadn't, raising suspicions. Sandra realizes that delays have been repeating and fears another disruption in the research, especially with the announcement of progress approaching. She decides she'll need to adjust the formula and races against time. Along the way, she bumps into a woman, quickly apologizes, and continues, while another person observes the scene with suspicion. Sandra is confronted by an arrogant noblewoman who mocks her presence, insinuating she is as bothersome as a rat. Meanwhile, Sandra reflects on the disdain some nobles have for her, particularly because she hired people without considering their social position. Realizing the root of the hostility, she understands that she is the target of envy and resistance. With the lack of results in the research, many began abandoning the project, and Sandra, assuming the blame, decided to resign from the lab. As she couldn't fulfill the imperial order, she faced severe criticism. Some even suggested her execution. Fearing retaliation, her own family disowned her. Without support and direction, she hit rock bottom, until something changed. At the moment Sandra was lost, Marquis Raynor took her in as a tutor. He extended a helping hand, giving her a chance to restart. With that, she managed to rise again. And now she is here, firm and determined to move forward. Rid realizes that he might have caused Sandra to relive painful memories by asking for help with the research that ruined her career. Still, he reveals his true reason. His mother suffers from mana deficiency, and there is no cure. He wants to create a potion to buy time and save her life. With sincerity, he asks Sandra to help him in this mission. With sincerity and determination, Rid looks into Sandra's eyes and says he needs her. He asks for her help to create a mana potion, making it clear that she is essential to achieving this goal. Sandra, surprised and touched by the direct request, listens in silence. Moved by Rid's request, and recalling the help she received in the past, Sandra agrees to help. She promises to do her best to save Nunnally. Rid, relieved and emotional, thanks her enthusiastically, shaking her hand with gratitude. Rid promises Sandra a new research lab and ensures that Christie Company will provide everything she needs. Excited, she dedicates herself to the work with determination. Sandra recalls that even when she worked in the capital, they never managed to obtain the moonlight grass, even though they knew it was the key ingredient. There was no remaining information about the plant in the old lab, but now she has a chance to restart. While working, something important crosses her mind, and she calls for Rid. With a confident smile, Sandra tells Rid that he can call her Sandra when they talk, but he must call her Sandra-sensei during lessons. Proudly, she holds the moonlight grass, while Rid smiles, finding humor in the situation. The atmosphere between them lightens and becomes friendlier. Rid imagines that his father and Chris must be facing difficulties in the capital. Meanwhile, the scene changes to show Chris visibly tense and surrounded by soldiers, indicating that the situation there is indeed not easy. A woman from the capital praises the lotion and conditioner, saying they are wonderful. She then proposes to buy the production rights and the formula for the Magnolia Empire. Chris, surprised and concerned by the proposal, urgently calls for Rid. During a pause in their journey, Raynor informs that they are about to arrive in the capital and warns Chris about the dangers of the place, asking her to be careful with her posture. Even aware of the risks, Chris shows excitement and determination, seeing the situation as a unique opportunity to prove her worth as a businesswoman. She enthusiastically envisions the success she can achieve. Chris observes the capital from above, amazed by its grandeur. Even though she has visited before, the city always impresses. The sight is so overwhelming that she can hardly put it into words. It is simply breathtaking. Chris looks at the grandeur of the capital of the Magnolia Empire, which is surrounded by 2 layers of walls. Near the castle are the noble neighborhoods, protected by high walls and a moat. Beyond these walls is the common city. While Raynor has already advanced, Chris and the other girl wait for the carriage inspection. Impressed, she comments that not even the elf capital's this big. The guards interrupt Chris and her companion for a thorough inspection upon learning they have something to present to the Imperial Majesties. Chris is nervous, but Raynor intervenes quickly, ensuring that they are trustworthy people. With this, the guards authorize their entry, and the group moves into the castle. As they walk through the castle, Raynor comments that the guards act on behalf of Count Roland and were probably trying to investigate Chris's products. He admits he didn't explain this earlier and takes part of the blame. Chris promises to be more careful next time. Soon they are interrupted by someone who recognizes Raynor with a provocative tone, drawing attention with a loud ahem. Count Roland unexpectedly appears, greeting Raynor with false politeness and commenting on the coincidence of meeting him here. He then feigns surprise upon noticing Chris's presence and asks who the beautiful lady beside him is. Chris introduces herself politely as Christy Saffron, while Roland, with a suspicious smile, says he has already heard of her. Count Roland teases Chris with a mocking smile, mentioning rumors that she was disinherited and left the Saffron Company. He then attacks her companion in a racist manner, implying it's typical for her to associate with a foolish woman. Chris tries to stay calm while the other girl becomes visibly uncomfortable with the humiliation. Roland watches their reactions with a provocative air. Chris realizes that Roland intentionally used the term beasts to provoke. She knows that calling the beastmen this way is offensive, and although she doesn't care about what they say about her, she won't accept Emma being insulted. Determined, she prepares to respond directly to the Count. Raynor scolds Count Roland, telling him he has gone too far with his provocations, especially with people who are here for an audience with the Majesties. Under pressure, Roland backs off and pretends to apologize before leaving. Later, in a room, Raynor explains that this man is Count Roland Galliano, someone obsessed with power and money. Emma apologized to Chris for causing trouble, but Chris reassures her, saying she did nothing wrong. The situation with Count Roland had a direct consequence. He was permanently banned from any dealings with the Christie Company. Soon, a servant appears to guide them to the Imperial Majesties, stating that they are fair people. Chris takes a deep breath, realizing that the moment has finally arrived. In the imposing audience hall, filled with nobles gathered, Chris and Emma finally come face to face with Emperor Arwen Magnolia and Empress Consort Matilda Magnolia. The Emperor greets them politely, apologizing for the wait. The moment is solemn, marking the beginning of a decisive meeting. Raynor formally introduces himself before the Emperor and apologizes for always having to travel to the castle. The Emperor, curious, asks who the young woman accompanying him is. With a respectful bow, Chris introduces herself as Christy Saffron, daughter of Baron Martin Saffron of the Kingdom of Astoria. The Emperor reacts with interest upon hearing her name. The Emperor comments that he has heard of Chris's connection with the Saffron Company, but is surprised to learn that she is also the daughter of a baron. Chris explains that her father's title was recently granted. This makes Count Roland realize that he treated her with less respect than he should have, visibly uncomfortable. The Empress, impatient, asks to see what they brought, ending the tension with a touch of authority. Chris presents the products to the imperial couple, the lotion and conditioner that she uses herself. While the men show little interest, the Empress, her ladies-in-waiting, and the maids are curious. Impressed by Chris's hair, one of them even asks to touch it, and she allows it with a confident smile. The Empress touches Chris's hair and is enchanted by its softness and shine. Admiring it, she comments that she has never seen hair so silky before. Chris elegantly offers the lotion for her to try as well. The Empress acknowledges the value of the product, saying that only women could understand its true importance. Count Roland tries to interrupt, claiming that the product is dangerous, but the Empress cuts him off coldly, making it clear that she didn't ask for his opinion and that she is speaking with Christy. Roland gets irritated, but the Empress ignores him and continues praising the lotion, saying that it is excellent for dry skin. With an amused smile, she jokingly asks if Christy plans to win over all the women in the castle. The Empress praises the gift, saying it is one of the best she has ever received. She seems enchanted by the sensation on her skin. Christy responds respectfully, saying she is honored by the compliments. In the background, another woman watches the scene with a serious and thoughtful expression. The Empress, enchanted by the products, praises the lotion and conditioner, saying they are wonderful. Then she surprises everyone by asking if Christy would consider selling the recipe and production rights to the Magnolia Empire. Christy reacts confused and shocked by the unexpected proposal. Christy gets nervous about the proposal and tries to politely refuse, saying that she can't decide alone since Marcus Raynor was also involved in the development. But the Empress replies that it wouldn't be a problem, as Raynor is a subject of the Magnolia Empire and cannot refuse. Christy realizes that the responsibility for the decision now lies entirely in her hands. As Christy recalls past traumas and criticisms, Raynor tries to react and take control of the situation. Rid intervenes with a direct speech. The company invested everything in these products, and if the Empire abuses its authority to take them, they will simply leave the country. He also warns that if the capital steals the rights to the creations, no one else will want to develop new products. Fearing to lose everything, Christy proposes a diplomatic solution. Instead of giving up the production rights, she offers the Empress the right of priority, guaranteeing that she will never be without the product. She ends by asking for the Majesty's understanding and tolerance. The Empress accepts Christie's proposal with a smile, recognizing that it would be unfair to forcibly take the people's creations. She states that if this were to happen, merchants would move away from the capital, which would lead the empire to decay. The Emperor declares that the empire will be more careful with the production rights from now on, and confirms that the rights to the lotion and conditioner will remain with the Christie Company and the Baldia territory. Everyone immediately complies, and Christie is surprised at how suddenly everything was resolved. The Empress winks conspiratorially, signaling that everything went according to her plan. Christie realizes, shocked, that everything was probably planned from the start. The expression on Raynor's face and the confident look from the Empress make it clear that the outcome was prearranged, including the negotiation and the sudden resolution of the impasse. Christie understands that the Empress never truly wanted the rights to the formula or production. She just wanted to ensure personal use of the products without appearing authoritarian or unjust. To do this, she manipulated the whole situation so that it would be Raynor who offered the promise. Even as a powerful noblewoman, she too sees him as nothing more than a pawn within the capital. Christie collapses onto the sofa, saying that she is exhausted, while Emma watches with a smile, congratulating her on the good work. When they are informed that the Emperor and Empress are present, both are startled. Raynor, sipping tea, solemnly recalls, "I told you not to let your guard down." The Emperor enters accompanied by the Empress and apologizes for interrupting their rest. He also apologizes for not introducing himself earlier. After hearing the explanation of what happened, he turns to Christie and apologizes for involving her in the plans of the day. With the prototypes of the lotion and conditioner almost finalized, rumors about large orders from the capital are already spreading. Greedy nobles begin to show interest in the products from the Baldia region. And so the discussion arises about exclusive rights, a way to contain their greed. Christie, relieved, thanks the Majesty, and says that she is happy that everything worked out in the end. Now that the production rights have been officially recognized for Chris, the nobles will no longer be able to easily take advantage of her. The Empress gives a hint, praising her intelligence and wishing she were her lady-in-waiting. Meanwhile, Raynor and other nobles gather to discuss new important matters, making it clear that the negotiation is far from over. Empress Matilda, full of energy, gets straight to the point and mentions the right to the first delivery. Christie is shocked by the urgency. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the castle, it is revealed that a foreign country has made a proposal for a political marriage with the imperial family or another high-level noble house, something that raises concerns. The Empress, smiling excitedly, points directly to Raynor's son, saying that he is the only one who still doesn't have a suitable bride, making it clear that she is suggesting a political marriage. This extra page shows a sweet and nostalgic moment. Rid appears, saying that from time to time, he dreams of his younger self. The scene then shows him as a child, calling for his mother and excitedly capturing a butterfly in the garden, smiling happily and innocently. Rid's mother praises the butterfly, but asks him to release it. She explains that butterflies are living, fragile creatures, and it would be cruel to keep it captive. Rid, still a child, doesn't fully understand what death means, but listens attentively as she says that if kept, the butterfly could die. Rid's mother tries to explain what life is in simple terms, saying that being alive means being able to move and speak, just like they do. She says that when life is lost, the person disappears forever. Rid, frightened by the idea, asks if she would also disappear if she died. With a smile, she comforts him, saying that she will always be with him, which relieves and moves Rid. Rid remembers a promise he made to his mother and feels a tightness in his chest. Thinking about the past, he comments that before he reincarnated, he was also a boy who liked to hunt insects. Overcome by a wave of nostalgia, he is surprised by a girl who screams his name and jumps onto him, making him fall to the ground in shock. Mel appears excited, holding a bird she found in the garden and showing it to Rid. He is impressed by the cuteness of the bird and asks if it is still a chick. Mel, all proud, confirms, and then asks a direct question, with a bright smile on her face. "Can I keep it, Nichan?" Rid looks at Mel and thinks about how she resembles their mother, both in her hair and her eyes, which are the same as his. To him, it's as if she is the perfect combination of both. Convinced, he decides that she will understand. Rid suggests they return the bird, as it might be being searched for by its parents, just like they were once. He comments that even birds fight to survive. Mel, curious, asks what it means to be alive. Rid smiles and responds lovingly. The woman describes her health deteriorating little by little, comparing it to water leaking from a cracked cup. At first, she just felt a little tired, but soon she lost strength. The illness came without warning, and now she can no longer get up on her own. In silence, she wonders if there's anything she can do to improve her fragile body. The woman struggles to bear the pain and emptiness she feels daily. Since she fell ill, she tries her best to ignore this feeling and just go through the day until she can sleep. The mornings are the worst. Thinking about how the illness also affects her children eats her up inside. Rid was outraged when he found out she was dying and started taking it out on others, while Mel cried constantly, even trying to stay calm. Inside, she was in complete despair. Rid changed. He is calmer now and even seems like an adult when he talks. His mother notices Mel's happiness, as she comments excitedly that her brother read a book to her. Despite losing control in the past, Rid has recovered and has become the strength that guides the family. This gives his mother a new reason to keep fighting. With a determined smile, Nunnally declares that she will not give up. She promises to fight against the illness and win, motivated by her love for her children. Even though she is weak, her heart is strong. She wants to stay alive for them. Rid enjoys the pleasant atmosphere and ends up napping outside. Upon waking up, he feels guilty for resting while his father and Chris are busy. Determined, he decides to practice his magical attributes, just like he did in the game, committing to work harder. Rid reflects that the current world is very similar to a game he played in his past life. Needing money, he ended up creating cosmetics that were presented to the Imperial family, something that never happened in the game. He realizes that by living his own life, new paths might open. Excited, he heads to a safe area and decides to test his magical attributes, starting with the fire element. Rid tests his powers in front of a large crystal and confidently confirms that he can use all the magical attributes. Rid decides to name his spells simply, using the attribute as the base, such as Fire Lance or Lightning Lance. He also prepares to react quickly in case of a surprise attack. Rid casts his spell firmly, invoking the powerful Fire Lance, which explodes forcefully when it hits the ground. Rid finishes his training, satisfied with the result. But he is soon startled when he realizes that Mel was watching everything. She runs excitedly, praising the magic she saw come from his hand, leaving Rid surprised and embarrassed. Rid asks Mel to keep the magic she saw a secret. To convince her, he promises to read her favorite picture book. Mel is thrilled and asks why he wants to hide something so beautiful. Still, she agrees, but soon asks him to show it again, excited. Rid thinks that if everyone finds out, he will definitely stand out too much. Rid receives a letter from Chris, who went to the capital. Upon opening it, he finds a chaotic summary. Chris mentions that Empress Matilda is crazy, that Raynor set her up, that Count Roland has been banned from business, and ends with "I'm in danger." Rid thinks it all seems a bit rude and is curious about what really happened. Soon after, he is called to his lessons, where he learns that to use attributes, one needs aptitude for them. During the lesson, the teacher asks if special magic requires special aptitude. Rid, unsure, shouts that he has no idea, and she praises his honesty. She explains that with enough training, anyone can inherit or even create their own special magic. This excites Rid, who begins imagining the possibilities of creating a magic of his own. Rid asks if special magic also needs a clear image, just like offensive magic. The teacher confirms and explains that creating or inheriting this type of magic requires much more mana and an even clearer image. Also, only the original creator can transfer special magic to someone else. In any case, without enough mana, it's impossible to use such a spell. Rid comments that the moonlight grass has mana-restoring properties. Now, the challenge is figuring out how to extract and concentrate that power. The teacher gets excited about the discovery and starts imagining what the final product could be, whether it would be a drink or injection. She gets so excited that she decides to run off to create prototypes, leaving Rid alone and frustrated by the sudden cancellation of lessons. As he walks under a stormy sky, Rid starts wondering if he could create an original spell, as long as he had enough mana. But soon a doubt arises. How could he measure the amount of mana he possesses? He imagines that maybe there is some spell or tool for this, as lightning illuminates the sky, highlighting the atmosphere of uncertainty. Rid runs home through a heavy rain, completely soaked. As soon as he enters, the maids are startled to see him in that state and quickly mobilize. One runs to fetch a towel, while others rush to prepare a hot bath, worried that he might catch a cold. Even though he is wet, Rid tries to keep a good mood and apologizes for arriving like this. Even though he says that simply changing clothes would be enough, Rid is forcibly taken by the maids, who are determined to warm him up properly due to the previous trauma in the garden. He tries to argue, but they ignore him and drag him to the hot bath. Rid relaxes in the bathtub, relieved to finally take a proper bath after so long. He comments that, in this world, people normally only clean themselves with warm cloths, so a full bath is considered a luxury. He is also surprised that they managed to set up the bathtub right in the middle of his room. While relaxing in the bathtub, Rid begins thinking about the cost of the bath and the amount of hot water used. Reflecting on units of measurement, like liters, grams, and meters, he realizes that they are the same as in his previous world. With this, he gets an idea and becomes excited, believing it could work for something he's planning. Rid walks determinedly to the courtyard while holding a measuring cup, which he received from a butler. He places it on a log and, with a confident smile, prepares to test his idea using magic. Rid begins filling the measuring cup with water magic. The cup holds exactly 1 liter and his plan is simple. Fill it, throw it out, and repeat the process several times. He names the spell 1 liter and intends to use it repeatedly to measure his own magical capacity. Rid continues his training, refining the 1 liter spell. He gets used to filling the cup with precision and decides to repeat the process dozens, then hundreds of times, 10, 20, 50, 100, up to 300 times. He only stops when he feels that his mana is almost depleted, using this as a base to measure his own magical limits. Rid, now tired and with little mana left, still keeps his focus and continues casting his spell with precision. With a determined smile on his face, he yells, "Focus!" while shaping the water with his hands. Even exhausted, he shows full control over his magic. After casting the 1 liter spell 980 times, Rid confirms that the feeling of mana loss is always the same. With this, he concludes that he has at least 980 mana. From this logic, he develops a new special spell called Mana Measurement, which displays the numerical value of anyone's mana within his field of vision, including his own. Rid decides to test his new spell immediately. He says Mana Measurement, and sees the value personal mana 80 appear before him. Surprised to hear a voice in his head, he tries again. But when he looks at another person, nothing happens. The spell only worked on himself so far. Rid gets excited to hear the spell's voice again and celebrates his success. He notices that his mana dropped from 80 to 60, concluding that Mana Measurement consumes 20 mana per use. Thinking about his mother, he sees the spell's usefulness. When she receives the mana-restoring potion, he will be able to check if the effect is really working. Rid walks confidently, holding the cup used in his training, looking ahead with determination. With a smile on his face, he proudly states that he has taken another step toward his goal. The boy explains that he was curious about the amount of mana required to cast a spell. That's why he ended up creating his own special magic called Mana Measurement. The woman, surprised and indignant, asks how he managed to do that, and criticizes his way of thinking, saying it's far from common sense. She seems not to believe what she's heard and tries to understand the scale of what he's done. Rid explains how he created his Mana Measurement magic, inspired by water measurements. He made a spell that released exactly 1 liter of magic and used that as a base. Sandra is surprised by the idea and realizes that he also has an aptitude for water magic. However, she seriously warns Rid If anyone finds out about this magic, he could be forced to work in a laboratory for the rest of his life. She advised him never to tell anyone. Rid, on the other hand, thought Sandra would be more excited about his invention. Rid questions why he would be forced to work just for creating this magic. Sandra then explains that while some researchers can produce mana, most ordinary people can't even generate or use magic. She says that anyone who has such refined control as he does is either a genius or someone who has trained a lot. Rid begins to understand the gravity of the situation and how his ability is rare and impressive. Rid reflects on how magic, despite seeming essential in this world, is actually used in few fields, like the military and research. He thought it was strange not to see anyone using magic in the mansion, but now he understands that most people simply can't use it. Realizing how rare it is, Rid feels it's a waste, since he expected magic to be something common in a fantasy world. Sandra explains that even if she thought of a spell to produce a liter of water, she wouldn't be able to cast it, as she doesn't have the water attribute, which frustrates her greatly. She then states that Rid is an out-of-the-norm prodigy, capable of doing what even she cannot. Rid acknowledges this, but wonders why Sandra, who is so skilled in mana conversion, wasn't forced to work in the capital like he would be. He realizes she is even more talented than he imagined. Sandra confirms with a smile that she was once chosen as the director of a research lab in the capital. This answers Rid's question of why she, despite being so skilled, wasn't forced to work there. She already held that position in the past. Sandra recounts that she was called to the capital because she was a genius, but was eventually pushed out due to envy. Still, she takes pride in her skill. Rid realizes that she had expected him to do something impressive. Sandra confirms, saying she always knew he would show something amazing if his talent was well honed. That's why she was so excited to teach him. In the end, she almost calls him a research substitute, which leaves Rid wondering if he is being seen as a student or a guinea pig. Rid agrees to keep his magic a secret, but complains that Sandra could have told him earlier. She responds enthusiastically, saying that society tries to force everyone to fit in, but those who truly stand out cannot be stopped. With a rebellious air, she declares that they will break all the rules of common sense. Rid thinks it was more fun to let things happen naturally, while Sandra shows that she can easily read his thoughts, which scares him a little. After everything, Rid and Sandra continue working on the mana restoring potion. The next step is to test different ways of consuming the moonlit grass, raw, boiled, and dried. Even knowing that the herb is extremely bitter and usually inedible, Rid decides to try it for his mother, determined to endure the horrible taste for her sake. Determined, Rid commits to conducting the experiment, even knowing how bitter the herb is. He tries all the samples courageously, but the reaction on his face shows just how difficult it was to bear the taste. Still, he presses on, taking notes on what he learned from each version of the herb tested. Rid dedicates himself to testing the ways of consuming the moonlit grass. Eating it raw proved to be extremely bitter, but recovered a good amount of mana. Boiled, it was not only unpleasant but the least effective. In powder form, although still tasting bad, it was easier to swallow and had the best effect, being the most efficient form in the test. Sandra decides to test a new way of consuming the powder, asking Rid to chew it and leave the taste in his mouth. He suffers from the taste, but she congratulates him for his effort. Despite the awful taste, Sandra concludes that the powdered version is already safe and effective enough for practical use. Rid celebrates with determination. They have finally completed the mana potion. Sandra, excited, presses him to say if the taste is good, showing a more playful and animated side. Rid realizes how much she enjoyed the whole process, which lightens the scene and makes it more fun. Rid, with a shy smile, thanks her and says he will never forget what Sandra did for him. But the conversation takes a curious turn when she hints that something else happened and that he will find out soon. Saying that Melody might tell him if he asks, Rid grows suspicious, feeling that something strange is coming. Rid arrives home and is surprised to see Mel, his younger sister, in the hallway. He runs excitedly to greet her, and she responds joyfully, calling him Ni-chan and welcoming him. The scene shows the affection between the two siblings, with a warm and affectionate reunion. Just as Rid is about to hug Mel, she quickly pulls away, complaining that he smells. The unexpected reaction catches him off guard, and soon everyone around him also steps away. Confused and embarrassed, Rid realizes he's alone in the middle of the hall, while one of the maids tries to ease the situation by saying that he doesn't smell that bad. One of the servants in the mansion, holding back laughter and trying to be polite, comments that Rid's clothes have a very strong smell and asks him to take a bath. Rid, embarrassed, accepts with a forced smile, but inside, he bursts with frustration, shouting Sandra's name, clearly blaming her for making him go through this. Rid watches the knights doing synchronized stretches with surprise. The calisthenics idea he created was passed on by Rubens to the knights, and now it's being widely adopted. Even though he finds the scene a bit strange, Rid understands that the exercises help prevent injuries and also serve as synchronization training, according to the commander. Rubens, considered a young promise among the knights, has reflexes on par with Rid. During lessons with him, Rid realized that Rubens understood the importance of warm-up exercises before intense activities. That's what led Rubens to adapt and spread the practice of calisthenics, although Rid didn't expect it to gain such widespread adoption. During the training, Rid gets distracted and ends up falling. Rubens reprimands him, saying that in a real battle, this would mean death. He then mentions that the knights are responsible for cleaning dungeons when they appear. When Rid learns this, he gets excited, discovering that he will go through specific dungeon training, asking to learn more about the subject. Rubens explains that in Tocarella, there are dangerous dungeons used to collect materials, train, or face hidden bosses. These dungeons are like living creatures, emerging when underground cores absorb large amounts of mana over time. When the core is saturated, an entrance forms, and the dungeon begins to generate monsters and treasures. Surface creatures are drawn inside, where they are devoured by monsters, and thus the dungeon feeds. Rid learns that leaving a dungeon active for too long leads to the accumulation of monsters, which eventually escape and cause destruction. For this reason, Knight Orders and Adventurer Guilds are responsible for eliminating them. The dungeon's core, located at the deepest part, must be destroyed. But this is risky, as it could cause the structure to collapse. Even when damaged, the core can hide and begin accumulating mana again. Rid compares the system to an ant colony, where the core is like the queen and the monsters are the worker ants. Rid asks what an adventurer is, and Rubens explains that they are basically people who do everything. There are two types of guilds, public and private. In the Magnolia Empire, the guild is public and accepts requests from all over the territory. In Baldia, the Knight Order deals with monsters and dungeons, so the Adventurer Guild focuses on collection missions. The more difficult the mission, the greater the reward. It's a more relaxed lifestyle, ideal for those seeking something lighter. Rubens comments that this has been a tradition for a long time, and Rid gets excited to know that he will receive a card if he joins. Rid comments that he would like to register as an adventurer in the future, and Rubens responds enthusiastically that he will make sure his sword skills are at their best. But out of nowhere, Rubens says that before that, Rid should marry Diana. Surprised and not understanding, Rid reacts shocked by the unexpected comment. Rubens, embarrassed, tries to avoid the subject of Diana, but Rid insists when he realizes Rubens likes her. Rubens tells him that Diana always wakes him up and once said she would get married one day, making it clear that she wouldn't always be around. Rid reacts surprised, believing this is a clear sign that Diana likes him, but Rubens still doubts it and says he's always had difficulty getting up early, trying to change the subject. Rubens continues trying to prove that Diana doesn't like him. He remembers that even when she prepares meals for him, she says it's just practice for when she has a husband in the future. He also mentions that when asked about marriage by her parents, Diana replied that he is just a friend, and their relationship isn't like that. Rubens insists that because of all this, there's no chance that Diana likes him, while Rid just watches in silence, unsure of what to say. Rid, confused and already losing patience, thinks the whole conversation is absurd and feels sorry for Diana. Upon learning that Rubens and she have special memories together, and that he promised to protect her when they were children, Rid gets upset. He points firmly and tells Rubens to confess his feelings to Diana, saying that it's something he needs to do without fail. Rid scolds Rubens, calling him a coward for not having the courage to confess. He says that, as a knight, he should know Diana better than anyone. Rubens, irritated, questions why he should obey, but becomes thoughtful when Rid tells him to reflect on the true meaning of Diana's words. He begins to consider what she really feels. Rid realizes he needed to give Rubens a push to take action. Seeing that he finally understood, Rid says he will be fine. Later, he smiles discreetly, remembering the situation, keeping the secret to himself. Mel notices and asks why he is laughing. while Diana watches, not understanding anything. Rubens takes Diana to a place where they used to play as children. She looks at the place with nostalgia, remembering the old times. When she asks what he wanted to say, Rubens gets nervous, but begins to speak sincerely, calling her name and trying to gather courage to confess. According to what Rid heard, Rubens finally confessed and began dating Diana. Watching the scene from a distance, he smiles satisfied, thinking the two could have gone straight to marriage, considering how much they match. In the morning, Rid sleeps peacefully until he is woken up in a rather unsubtle way by Mel, who jumps excitedly on top of him, shouting. He wakes up startled, trying to greet her, still confused, while she cheerfully says, "Good morning," having fun with the situation. Rid comments that, despite trying to wake up first, Mel always finds a way to be the first to get him up, even though she's pretty excited about it. When he tries to stop her, she gets upset. After breakfast, Mel returns to her room to study various subjects like reading, etiquette, and dancing as part of her advanced education. Rid realizes that, still being a child, she just wants to spend some time with him in the morning. A simple but important moment for her. Rid joyfully receives his father and Chris's return to the mansion. Although he accepts Mel's morning attacks with good humor, he notices something is different. Chris appears before him visibly shaken, forcing a smile and saying she did her best to endure something. Her expression suggests she went through a difficult situation during this time. Rid worries when he sees Chris stumbling from exhaustion. His father explains that the Empress really liked her and spent the entire trip talking about official matters, without giving her any time to rest. Chris admits she is just tired from the trip to the capital. His father thanks her for her effort and asks that they let her rest in the guest room. After that, he calls Rid for a serious talk in his office. In the office, Rid's father looks at him seriously before starting the conversation. He directly asks how his son changed so much in such a short time, showing surprise and perhaps even suspicion. Rid is confused, not immediately understanding the reason for the question. Rid's father makes it clear that he's noticing something unusual. He admits to testing his son with questions and pressure, but is surprised by Rid's calmness, something unusual for a child. He questions how Rid managed to create such complex things, like the offering to the imperial couple, without any books or instructions available in the mansion. Rid realizes he won't be able to fool his father for long, and decides to face the conversation with sincerity. Faced with his father's insistence, Rid realizes he needs to be careful with what he says. He thinks about telling him how he regained the memories of his past life after fainting in the garden. With these memories mixed with Rid's original memories, he ended up becoming a new person, a fusion of who he was and who he is now. Even though he retains the essence of his past life, he still carries the feelings and memories of the current Rid. Rid tells him that he felt guilty for the cold way he treated his younger sister and the maids before recovering his memories. He explains that now he feels respect for them and wants to become a stronger person. He acknowledges that he has changed not only in his thoughts, but also in his feelings, revealing a sincere desire to be a better person. The protagonist, a curious blonde boy, walks up to a large door in the quiet corridor of the castle, believing that maybe the person he is looking for is sleeping. He knocks on the door carefully and asks if Chris is there. Receiving no answer, he turns the doorknob and enters slowly. With a watchful and expectant look, he observes the environment around him. Curiosity takes over his face as he moves further into the room, calling again for Chris. He steps softly, trying not to make noise. Upon entering the room, the protagonist finds Chris sleeping deeply. He confirms in his mind that she really was sleeping and notices how exhausted she looks. Surprised, he observes in silence, admiring her beauty. Chris moves slightly in bed, murmuring soft sounds while still asleep. The boy remains still, looking at her with a calm and curious expression. While watching Chris sleep, the protagonist is startled when he sees her move and murmur confused words. She seems to be having a restless dream, calling for someone with a concerned tone. The boy, startled, feels his heart race and wonders what kind of dream she might be having. As he realizes the content of what she's saying, he hesitates, uncomfortable, and considers that perhaps he shouldn't continue listening to it. The protagonist tries to quietly leave the room, but realizes that the door won't open. Surprised, he wonders if someone is blocking the exit from the other side. Suddenly, the door creaks open, revealing a girl with a serious expression. Upon recognizing her, the boy is stunned to see it's Mel, who scolds him casually for what he was doing. Chris slowly awakens, realizing the movement in the room. Meanwhile, outside, the protagonist tries to convince Mel to open the door, saying he just wanted to check how Chris was doing. Mel scolds him, reminding him that one shouldn't enter a woman's room without permission. The boy asks with a smile for her to open the door before Chris notices. Mel, provocatively, pretends to consider whether she should open it or not, making the boy even more anxious. He apologizes, worried about the situation. Chris wakes up embarrassed, saying she fell asleep from being so tired, not believing she did that there. The protagonist, relieved that he hadn't been caught earlier, smiles and tries to reassure her, telling her not to worry. Soon after, Chris starts recounting what happened during her trip to the capital. Endless conversations with the Empress, an important exchange with Count Roland, and a performance by others who hid things from her. While listening, the boy admits that his father didn't tell him anything and thanks her for sharing. The day after the audience, the Emperor orders Count Roland to pay reparations for insulting Chris without knowing she was a foreign noble. The decision embarrasses the Count once again in front of the court. However, Chris refuses the compensation, surprising everyone. Instead, she declares that she has a request to make. The Emperor allows her to speak freely, curious to know what else she desires. With a firm and serious look, Chris prepares to reveal her true intention. In front of the court, Chris makes a direct request to everyone, that they stop believing in rumors and only pass on confirmed information. She warns that spreading gossip can tarnish the reputation of the Magnolia Empire before the world. Her firm words surprise the attendees, especially Roland, who reacts shocked. Chris completes by saying that everyone should use the situation as a lesson and learn from their own mistakes. After Chris's words, one of the nobles apologizes, acknowledging that their subordinates were not properly instructed and asks for forgiveness on behalf of all. Chris remains firm, staring at the situation seriously. Later, in a more relaxed conversation, she reflects on her attitude and admits that she might have gone too far by speaking like that in front of so many. The protagonist listens with empathy and recognizes that all of that must have been difficult. In the end, the narration highlights that Chris managed to resolve the problem by holding the entire nobility accountable. Not just Roland. As they talk, the protagonist comments that Count Roland's allies are losing influence after the incident. He asks if Chris will just wait to see what the Count does next. He murmurs a compliment, calling Chris a brilliant and courageous heroine, but hides it when she questions him. In response, Chris coolly analyzes the situation. Roland is not just any count. He is skilled at controlling trade, making shady deals, and securing rights. She reveals that he is an obstacle that will need to be faced if they want to expand their business. The protagonist, impressed with her determined posture, concludes that he would never want to have her as an enemy. The protagonist expresses joy at the success of the business negotiations and thanks Chris, saying that her and the Christie Company's arrival in Baldia territory has been a real blessing. Chris reacts surprised and emotional. In her thoughts, she reflects on how her previous attempts never yielded results, despite much effort, and remembers that she was never truly accepted. Upon hearing the protagonist's kind words, she responds with humility, saying it is an honor, but then hesitates. Deep down, she feels lucky to have met him, recognizing the value of that moment and partnership. While Rid reflects on Chris and her company, he recalls Count Roland's offensive comment, calling her a hag who left the Saffron Company. In fact, Chris was born into a family where her older brother was supposed to inherit the business. However, her talent in business ended up surpassing his. Despite this, she initially only wanted to support him behind the scenes of the company. Even with good intentions, people began to comment and judge, which led her to go down her own path, founding the Christie Company. With comments spreading and creating tension, Chris feared that her family's business could divide because of her. To prevent this, she decided to become independent. She didn't want to take customers from the family business, so she founded a new company in Baldia, a territory without elvish companies. Even with talent, starting from scratch in a foreign land proved to be a huge challenge. During this period, progress was slow, and much time passed without major accomplishments or recognition. That's when he appeared. While Chris was struggling to grow her company, even with all her talent, the protagonist came into her life. With a confident look and a slight smile, he brought new energy to a moment when everything seemed stagnant. Chris realizes in her thoughts that, despite talent, it's often not enough to achieve results. But his arrival changed something. Sitting and reflecting, the protagonist thinks about everything Chris has been through. He believes that fate smiled on her because of all the effort she put in, day after day, even without seeing immediate results. He remembers that his butler only mentioned the Christie Company because of the impact of Chris's work in Baldia. Even though silent, he wishes his words make a difference, as he doesn't like seeing her belittle herself that way. With a kind smile, the protagonist looks at Chris and tells her that she has come this far by her own merit. He encourages her to have confidence in herself. Chris is visibly surprised and touched by the words. Emotionally, she asks him to stop, not believing she is receiving so many compliments. Still, her expressions reveal just how much those words meant to her. The protagonist's words deeply touch Chris's heart. She remembers how hard she worked, facing countless difficulties and dedicating herself tirelessly. Being praised in that way almost makes her cry with emotion, realizing that maybe she has always wanted to be recognized by someone. Feeling happier than ever, she thanks him sincerely, with a tearful and grateful smile. After composing herself, Chris resumes the conversation professionally, explaining the agreed terms. They will provide 1 month of priority stock for the Majesty, only selling to the market after that. Extra orders won't follow the same conditions, and payment will be upfront. Rid listens attentively and asks for more details about the Majesty's priority rights. Chris, confident, assures him that she is taking care of everything, smiling contentedly. Still, he wonders if it was right to promise so much, considering aloe production has barely started. However, he reassures himself, remembering he can ask his father for more ingredients. The operation progresses quickly. An enthusiastic man announces the beginning of the aloe harvest, explaining that he has already activated the distribution channels of the Christie and Saffron companies, signed contracts with farmers, and requested wild aloe from foreign guilds. All of this before the market price spikes. The protagonist is surprised by the speed of the actions, but recognizes it was the right time to act. An elegant woman comments that now they will be busy fulfilling the Empress's orders, but reminds Chris to ensure she gets products for herself as well, since she is the face of the company. During the conversation, Rid compliments Chris, saying that there's hardly anyone as beautiful as her, and that everyone would want her as a representative. This leaves Chris speechless, clearly embarrassed, and she scolds him, telling him he should choose his words better. Confused, Rid thinks he's being careful but insists, firmly stating that she is beautiful, and that the product only makes her even more attractive, guaranteeing that everyone would adore her. Desperate from so much direct praise, Chris tries to end the subject, completely flushed. As they continue talking, the group decides the names for the products they will sell: Skin Lotion Christie and Conditioner Christie Emma. Chris is embarrassed to find out that the names were inspired by them, apologizing to Emma, who reacts surprised. They discuss the possibilities of expanding the items. Even without olives, the conditioner can be made with essential oils, and the lotion is not a unique product. It can vary with different ingredients and scents. This excites Chris, and she begins imagining the creation of several new products. Chris concludes by explaining that now she can negotiate directly with the Empress, and if Rid needs anything, he can contact her through her. He understands and accepts the proposal calmly. However, upon hearing the name of Empress Matilda, Chris panics, remembering the imposing and intimidating figure of the woman. Meanwhile, Rid simply observes, curious, thinking about the Empress, and not understanding Chris's sudden panic. Rid comments humorously that he would rather stay away from someone who can make others groan in fear even while sleeping, referring to the Empress. He laughs, saying she seems quite terrifying. The atmosphere falls silent for a moment, until Chris, suspicious, stares at him and asks how he knows she groans while sleeping. Rid freezes, realizing he spoke too much without thinking, and tries to cover up the slip-up, but it's too late. Chris catches him red-handed. Chris explodes in anger upon realizing that Rid had watched her while she was sleeping. Furious, she shouts that he is a scoundrel for spying on a woman in such a vulnerable moment. Her face is red with shame and indignation, and her energy surges toward him like a thunderstorm ready to strike. Rid, panicked, quickly tries to justify himself, saying he only wanted to provoke a little, and that it was all just a coincidence. Meanwhile, the maid enters with more tea, and Mel appears along with her stuffed animal. Desperate, Rid asks Mel to explain that he didn't have bad intentions when he saw her sleeping. Mel, however, stares at him in silence, without giving a clear answer, while Chris, still irritated, is held back by one of the maids. Mel, with her calm and direct tone, denies Rid without hesitation. saying that it wasn't a coincidence. He had been staring at Chris for quite a while she was sleeping. Rid falls into despair upon hearing this, screaming Mel's name, begging for support. But it's too late. The atmosphere shifts drastically, falling into silence, with a drop of water marking the beginning of a possible punishment. In a dark room, a woman wakes up gasping for air, with her heart racing and confused thoughts. She tries to concentrate, but can't calm herself enough to feel the technique she calls the feeling of the drop of water. Coughing heavily, she covers her mouth and notices bloodstains on her hand, signaling a serious condition. Despite this, she faces the pain with determination, swearing to herself that she will never give up, no matter what happens. Sitting on the bed, with her hands on her chest and eyes full of determination, the woman makes a promise to herself. Even weakened, she firmly declares that one day she will rise completely again. She cries out for everyone to see. She will get back on her feet with her own strength, no matter how long it takes or how much she suffers along the way. Exhausted and still gasping after her crisis, the woman tries to recover her breath in bed. Between coughs and heavy breaths, she slowly calms down and tells herself that it's enough for now. Soon after, someone knocks on the door. With a tired smile, she allows the entrance, saying she's open. The scene changes to show someone approaching, slowly entering the room. 3 visitors enter the room after knocking on the door, being greeted politely. The woman in bed greets them with a slight smile, even though she is still weakened, and apologizes for her appearance. She introduces herself kindly. She is the wife of Marquis Rainer, and her name is Nunali Baldia. One of the visitors smiles warmly in response, setting a friendly atmosphere in the room. One of the visitors introduces herself as Sandra Ernest, a magical researcher. Her son, surprised, thinks he had no idea his mother could act so nobly and elegantly. Then the man by the bedside turns to the sick woman, Nunali, with a serious tone. He apologizes for not having had the courage earlier, and reveals that he had been hiding from her what the illness was that she was facing. With a serious expression, the man finally reveals the truth to Nunali. The disease she faces is called mana deficiency. He continues explaining that it is an incurable and fatal condition. The words weigh in the air as Nunali listens in silence, facing the reality with firmness. Upon hearing the revelation, the man is surprised and asks who told Nunali the truth, but calmly she responds that she already knew. She explains that she knows her own body better than anyone. Even without knowing the name of the disease, she had already felt it was something fatal. With a serene smile, she asks him not to be angry with anyone, because no one revealed it. She simply felt it. Nunali accepts the name of the disease she carries with serenity, mana deficiency. She says that, even though it is something serious and incurable, she feels relieved to finally know what it is. Rid watches in silence with tears in his eyes, recognizing his mother's strength in facing this reality. She smiles lightly, joking that she must be a failure of a mother for making her own son worry so much. She then apologizes to Rid, acknowledging how difficult this situation has been for him. Rid responds firmly to his mother's words, saying that she is not a failed mother, and if anyone failed, it was his father. He even recalls his father admitting this before, which makes him angry. Sandra tries to contain the situation, saying that this kind of thing shouldn't be discussed there, but she also agrees that Rid's father is too strict, especially with his own family. While everyone discusses, Nunali smiles lightly and jokes with her son, telling him to call Mel just Mel, not caring about what she says. The tense moment transforms into a lighter, more welcoming family scene. Rid explodes in frustration, asking his father if he has any idea how lonely and powerless his mother has felt all this time. Meanwhile, the father reflects in silence, recognizing his guilt. Buried in work to escape reality, he had noticed the signs of the illness, but was too afraid to face the truth and tell Nunali. And all this time she had faced everything alone. Nunali's husband kneels before her, repentant, admitting that he made a huge mistake. She, with a soft smile, says she didn't want to be a burden, but he reassures her, saying not to worry. In an emotional moment, he declares his love for her. Nunali, with tenderness in her eyes, responds sincerely. She also loves him. The words unite the couple in a sincere moment of reconciliation and affection. After the emotional moment, Sandra refocuses the situation. She approaches firmly and hands Nunali a potion, explaining that, although it is not a cure, the drink should help alleviate the symptoms of mana deficiency. She recommends that the potion be taken with water, as the taste is unpleasant. Nunnally, despite coughing, accepts it with determination, while Rid watches, surprised by the initiative. Right after taking the potion, Nunnally reacts badly, letting out a groan of pain and beginning to gasp for breath. Rid runs to her, startled, calling for his mother with concern. As she continues to breathe irregularly and weakened, he realizes that the situation is grave. With a serious expression, he immediately orders them to measure her mana. Something is wrong, and he knows there's no time to waste. Rid checks his mother's mana levels and is shocked. She has only 8 mana left. Desperate, he shouts for Sandra to act quickly and bring the medicine. Sandra is also surprised by the severity of the situation, but acts without hesitation. While Nunnally struggles to breathe, Sandra rushes to her with another dose of medicine and extends her hand urgently, asking her to take it as quickly as possible. Nunnally is gasping and weakened, barely able to stay conscious. Sandra hurries, begging her to open her mouth to take the medicine. Desperation fills the room. Rid watches with a tight heart and tears in his eyes, calling for his mother and shouting with all his strength. He begs her not to give up. Each second feels eternal as everyone tries to save her. Nunnally calls for Rid with her last strength before passing out. He falls into despair, shouting with all his might, crying and calling for his mother. The pain and fear take over the boy, who runs toward her, refusing to accept the worst. In that critical moment, something unexpected happens. An intense light starts to form, surprising everyone around. Raynor holds Nunnally's unconscious body tightly, desperately, hugging her with all his strength. In that moment, he starts to remember the past, when he first met Nunnally, still as Arwen's assistant. Back then, his ambition was to rise through the ranks of the capital, and he never imagined how that woman would change his life. Arwen appears disguised with a wig, preparing to leave incognito through the city. Even though Raynor questions the real need for this inspection, Arwen insists, saying he has 2 reasons: to see how things are in the city, and to find a gift for his wife. Raynor, surprised, becomes thoughtful at the last justification, while Arwen remains calm, saying he has a good reason for it. Arwen explains that he doesn't want to delegate the gift choice to anyone, because doing it personally gives it more meaning. He even mentions that Raynor would understand this when he gets married. Shortly after, Arwen reveals something more serious. His father is in fragile health and should not return to manage government affairs. Therefore, he will probably inherit the crown in a few years, and these small outings will become increasingly rare. Raynor is surprised to learn the seriousness of the situation. Arwen, with a serene smile, says that before everything, he wants to record in his eyes what he needs to protect. It's a symbolic way of saying he wants to remember and value what is important before taking the throne. Then, he thanks Raynor for the company on the city stroll, showing that he values the simple moment spent with his friend. Raynor tries to apologize, but Arwen responds that it's fine. This is a problem he must handle himself. Arwen asks for permission to leave, and Raynor authorizes him, but warns him not to overdo it. Meanwhile, a voice yells for him to stop, and another person is held back by a guard. Raynor, with an unchanged, calm expression, orders a guard named Dynas to protect Arwen, even as someone angry yells to be released. A woman is surprised by an arrogant man in an alley. He grabs her wrist firmly, laughing, and says he wants to continue their conversation from before. The woman reacts angrily, making it clear that she already rejected him officially and has nothing to discuss with such an arrogant and selfish person. The woman is surrounded by a group of men with malicious expressions, led by the same man who had harassed her earlier. She panics when she realizes the situation, her eyes wide, trying to move away. The man grabs her face firmly, ignoring her pleas for help. He says a car will come to pick them up soon and promises to make her feel the same humiliation he suffered, showing pleasure in her fearful expression. As the woman is forced into silence with his hand over her mouth, the aggressor tries to disguise the situation, claiming she is his lover and they are just having an intimate moment. However, a man approaches and questions what is happening. He then directly addresses the woman, calling her "my lady" and asking her to tell the truth, offering an opportunity for her to break free from the situation. The woman finally reacts firmly, screaming for help and angrily stating that none of these men are her lover. She is being grabbed forcefully but doesn't hesitate to denounce the lie and the abusive situation. The man with glasses, who had arrived earlier, realizes the gravity of the situation. With a confident and determined look, he declares that he will do everything in his power to save her, and when he hears her direct plea for help, He responds with a, "As you wish, ready to act." The man with long hair and a firm posture ends the situation authoritatively, saying that he has nothing to say and orders the aggressor to leave. The other, already defeated and injured, struggles to get up but tries to maintain his pride, shouting that his name is Logos of the Galliano family and that this won't end like this. He runs away while being ignored. After being saved, the woman starts crying in relief and thanks him, saying that she thought no one would come to help her, even if she screamed. Rainer asks if she is injured and praises her courage for holding out until the end. A strong bald man runs in, shouting for Rainer and asking if she is all right, while another figure observes the situation with relief in the background. While watching Rainer and his companions talking, the woman smiles emotionally and thinks to herself that he is a wonderful person. Rainer jokes with Dinas, asking him not to shout his name like that. The woman respectfully calls him Rainer Sama, admiring his kind and protective demeanor even more. Several months passed. The protagonist is surprised by the news that he received a marriage proposal, something he had not been informed of until now. The proposal came from someone recommended by Matilda and by his own parents. Although suspicious, he checks a document and confirms that it was indeed written by his father. Soon after, another young man appears showing an approval letter, proving that everything is being treated seriously. The protagonist discovers that his partner in the arranged marriage is known as the Scarlet Lady, Nunnally Ronimus. She is famous for her beauty, but also for having rejected every marriage proposal until now. Even so, he admits he has never seen or met her personally. The scene then shows an imposing mansion, suggesting the location where this meeting about to take place will unfold. The protagonist immediately recognizes the young woman in front of him as the girl he had met in the past. Surprised by the reunion, he observes more closely and realizes she is even more beautiful than he remembered. Nunnally, with a calm smile, responds gently and mentions that she also did not expect they would meet again someday. During the formal conversation, the protagonist tries to compliment Nunnally, saying that she lives up to the title of Crimson Lady. Confused by the comment, she questions what exactly he meant. Realizing the misunderstanding, he quickly explains that he was referring to her beautiful crimson hair and that he only meant to say she was a charming woman. Nunnally is surprised and slightly blushing from the direct compliment. Embarrassed, Nunnally suddenly stands up and tries to justify herself. She explains that she rejected a proposal from another man in the past, and he spread rumors that it was because of the harsh criticism she made. Since then, rumors have circulated, and she has been called the Crimson Lady. The protagonist, surprised, admits he knew nothing of this. She covers her face, clearly embarrassed by the situation. Nunnally is moved when she realizes that the nickname Crimson Lady was said with admiration and not mockery, as she had imagined. She smiles in relief and delight, recognizing the kind gesture. The protagonist, for his part, admits he is enchanted by her, sincerely showing how much he admires her. The atmosphere between the two changes completely, becoming lighter and warmer. The protagonist declares his desire for Nunnally to come with him to the Baldia territory as his wife. At the request, she smiles sweetly and agrees without hesitation, saying that she will go with pleasure if he truly agrees to it. This moment seals the official beginning of their relationship. After Nunnally swallows the medicine, everyone around becomes tense. The protagonist shouts for the mana measurement to be done immediately, waiting for improvement. The researcher watches anxiously, hoping the medicine works. Meanwhile, the boy closes his eyes and silently prays, desperately hoping that her mana will react. The measurement reveals a surprising result. Nunnally now has 101 mana. Everyone around is shocked and then celebrates emotionally. The protagonist cheers upon seeing that the medicine worked. Nunnally slowly wakes up, calling for her husband with a weak smile. The boy runs to her, relieved, calling her mother with tears in his eyes. Nunnally, with a relieved smile, says she is feeling better. The protagonist breaks down in tears of happiness, calling out to her with all his strength. He runs toward his mother, completely emotional to see her awake and well after so much suffering. After the sudden attack, a doctor was called to examine the protagonist's mother. With everyone gathered, they decided to start a continuous treatment with the mana potion, administering doses 3 times a day. Additionally, maids were stationed permanently in the room for any emergency. The recovery was impressive. Just 1 dose managed to restore 100 mana. Meanwhile, the protagonist, emotional, credits the improvement to Rainer Sama's effort and support. Sandra explains that Rainer quickly realized that Nonoli wouldn't be able to take the medicine by herself anymore. Without hesitation, he chewed the potion, mixed it with water in his mouth, and administered it directly mouth to mouth. The protagonist watches, amazed by his father's quickness and firmness, thinking he is incredible. Meanwhile, he tries to strike up a conversation with Sandra, asking if she shouldn't be having dinner with the family. The protagonist, with a mischievous look, suggests that everyone leave the room to let the lovebirds be alone. Rainer is at Nonoli's bedside, and she looks shy and emotional with the situation. In the background, Sandra and the protagonist begin to move away, respecting the intimate moment between the two. That night, inside a palace, advisors discuss a letter involving a marriage proposal. One of them questions the decision to accept the letter as it is, considering it a sign of disrespect. Despite this, the Empire fulfilled its part of the agreement by sending someone of equal nobility. One of the advisors points out that the visit from a marquise's son at this time, especially someone close to the princess's age, cannot be a coincidence, implying there are political intentions behind the meeting. The king decides to allow the marquise's visit, reminding them that it was the kingdom itself that requested a marriage partner, and therefore they cannot simply reject the one chosen. However, he comments that if any issue arises regarding the marquis, the situation may change. Meanwhile, one advisor observes in silence, looking either suspicious or worried. While the king permits the visit, there is doubt about whether the marquis's son is truly suitable for the princess. One of those present, with a shrewd and malicious look, begins to plot something, suggesting a hidden plan with a sinister smile. He seems ready to act on his own to test or sabotage the young visitor. The blonde boy, who is the protagonist, walks alongside an older and elegant woman. She humorously comments on something he said earlier, finding it funny that he told them to leave the lovebirds alone. Looking at him, she notices that, despite his young appearance, there is something about him that doesn't match his age, as if only his body is young. The protagonist reacts surprised and somewhat uncomfortable, nervously laughing and denying the idea. Then the woman changes the subject. She reveals that she had an idea for a new type of magic and wants them to create it together. The moment seems important to her, and she holds a mysterious object in her hands, revealing that she wants to discuss something serious. The boy's reaction is one of astonishment and curiosity. The protagonist guides the woman to a mysterious door. With a big smile, he invites her in. As the magical key turns and unlocks the place, he reveals that the new spell he wants to create with her is related to memory, a magic linked to memories. The woman follows him, curious, as the light from the other side illuminates the path ahead. While walking through a lit corridor, the protagonist recalls something he read in his past life, a theory that the brain never forgets anything. It only stores memories in the subconscious. Thinking about his own reincarnation, he realizes he has retained the memories of his previous life, which leads him to wonder if the brain is also connected to the soul, not just the body. Sitting and thoughtful, he connects these thoughts to the concept of magic and begins to imagine the creation of a spell capable of accessing the soul's memories. With determined eyes, he shares his idea, asking if there is something similar to this type of magic. The woman mentions that the concept brought up by the protagonist reminds her of an old academic thought from this world, something known as the divine path of life magic. Curious, the boy asks more about it. She explains that it is a little-known philosophy, gathered from the central words of an ancient belief. Only a small group knows this path. The protagonist understands that this is linked to the idea that vital force, the source of mana, is also a trail that leads to the gods. As he listens, he connects this information to what he wants to develop, realizing that this philosophy may be directly connected to the memory magic he plans to create. The protagonist proposes a bold idea to try the opposite of mana conversion, suggesting a new and risky approach. The woman, surprised by the proposal, admits that she can't even imagine what could happen with that. Still, she warns him not to overdo it. In silence, the boy touches his own chest, feeling something profound. He realizes he is dealing with something very close to the soul, perhaps its very essence. Sitting in a meditative position, the protagonist begins his magical experiment. First, he follows the common process, compressing his vital force to generate mana. Then he tries to channel this mana deep within his body. While observing, the woman follows everything attentively. He decides to try going further, pressing the energy tighter inside himself, even without immediate signs of effect. He reflects on the possibility of converting mana back into vital force, and if this is possible, perhaps the fate of this new vital force lies where the soul resides. During meditation, the protagonist notices something strange. The mana begins to be sucked into an unknown place. Intrigued and apprehensive, he watches a trail of energy being pulled toward a mysterious rift. A hole forms in front of him, something abnormal and unexpected. His gaze fills with alertness as he realizes this opening may represent a danger. He feels something is wrong and thinks that this could end badly. The protagonist awakens in an unknown place and wonders where he is. Looking around, he notices he is surrounded by floating bookshelves everywhere, an infinite library that stretches as far as the eye can see. While trying to understand the environment, he hears a voice greeting him. Surprised, he turns and sees a mysterious figure approaching. The protagonist faces a figure identical to himself. Surprised, he questions the identity of this being, as he is looking at his own image. The other boy smiles calmly and introduces himself as the personification of his memories. He explains that this place exists to help him recall his past life. Suggesting a name, he says he can be called Memory, as it represents exactly that. Confused, the protagonist decides to cooperate for now, accepting that he needs to deal with the situation to move forward. The protagonist expresses the desire to recover memories more clearly, comparing this to searching on the internet. The entity called Memory responds that it would be difficult, but possible through him. He explains that he can search all the information from this world, and from that moment on, the protagonist can simply call him. Despite this, he reveals that ordinary people should not be there, but the protagonist, in a special way, managed to access that space. Impressed, the boy asks how he can call him again in the future. Memory replies that it's enough to use mana for that, since the protagonist is good at it. But before anything, he approaches and warns that there is an important condition that needs to be said. The entity Memory warns the protagonist that, although he was able to get there easily, this is an extremely delicate place. After all, they are inside his own soul. Therefore, he warns never to return alone because it is dangerous. With a smile, he promises to help him whenever needed, just by calling him. The protagonist thanks for the help, and the two exchange a friendly gesture before the farewell. Then, Memory waves and disappears with a simple goodbye, leaving behind a glowing trail of light. The woman watches silently until her eyes widen as she notices something strange. Alarmed, she calls out to the protagonist, concerned about his state. Suddenly, the boy wakes up abruptly, still disoriented, not knowing where he is. When he gets up, both are startled and scream in panic, creating a chaotic and comical scene as they try to understand what just happened. After the scare, the woman asks what happened to the protagonist, calling him Sandra. He tries to act normally, but she reprimands him, saying he was too quiet, and that's why she went to check. However, she was surprised by his sudden scream. She comments that he was unconscious for a long time and asks if he is feeling all right. The boy, a little embarrassed, thanks her and apologizes for worrying her. The protagonist hesitates as he thinks whether or not he should tell Sandra the truth. He decides to say that he failed, pretending nothing much happened. Sandra responds with understanding, saying there were no guarantees that it would work anyway. Meanwhile, he reflects inwardly about what Memory told him, that the place inside the soul was dangerous. If something had gone wrong, he could have been trapped there forever. Still, he keeps this information to himself. Back in the room, the protagonist calls out to Memory quietly, just to test it. To his surprise, the voice responds inside his head, proving that the connection works even from a distance. Surprised, he confirms that it really worked. Memory greets him casually, saying that he's glad he came back in one piece. The protagonist admits that he just wanted to test it, without any serious questions for now. The communication was a success. He can now access his memories whenever he wants. In front of an imposing building, the protagonist says goodbye, saying he can be called whenever they need him. Soon after, he enters one of the rooms with a smile on his face and asks how his mother is feeling. Sandra, standing beside the woman, confirms that everything is fine, saying that she has been carefully adjusting the medication. The boy's mother thanks her, saying that she already feels much better thanks to the treatment. The protagonist observes his mother talking to Sandra and reflects on the importance of finding a cure. He wants to improve the treatment as soon as possible, not only to save his mother, but also to help others with the same condition. He remembers that since his mother nearly died, Sandra took on the role of her personal doctor. As a magical researcher specializing in vital force and mana, she was the best suited to handle the disease. Meanwhile, Sandra notices his gaze and suspiciously asks if he's thinking something rude. Awkwardly, he quickly denies, trying to hide his ironic thoughts about her pretending to be innocent. The mother of the protagonist notices that he's pensive and asks if something is wrong, commenting that he seems tense. He snaps out of his thoughts and answers that he was just reflecting. She then advises him not to overexert himself. Soon after, she remembers that he has an appointment with Rainer Sama. The protagonist realizes the time and confirms that he was called. Before leaving, the mother smiles and asks him to send regards to Rainer, to which he responds enthusiastically, saying goodbye. A serious-looking man informs that the schedule for the protagonist's visit to Rennerut has finally been set. The news immediately impacts the boy, who widens his eyes with a mix of surprise and expectation. Inside, he reacts strongly, feeling that the long-awaited moment has finally arrived. The protagonist reveals that the real reason he requested the trip to Rennerut was to find a cure for his mother's illness. However, there's a major problem with one of the main ingredients for the mana potion, the herb called moonlight grass. This ingredient is difficult to obtain because it cannot be cultivated, and the only available source is under the control of a man named Chris's company. Because of that, he cannot make the potion public. Remembering his past life, the boy knows that Rennerut is a country with advanced agricultural technology. He believes that there, he will find information or ways to secure a stable supply of the herb, which could finally resolve this deadlock. The protagonist becomes alert upon hearing that Rennerut may be plotting something. He is informed that although King Elias is trying to maintain friendly relations, some of his vassals are against the planned marriage. There's a possibility that these vassals might try to force him to give up the union, which worries him. He understands that if they make him ineligible to marry the princess, they might place someone from the royal family in his place. Even recognizing that some vassals may only want to restore equality between the kingdoms, he knows the situation could become dangerous if they push too far. Curious, the protagonist asks his father how he knows so much about Rennerut's internal conflicts. The father responds firmly, explaining that no country has a unified will, and relying only on superficial information is useless for those who wish to protect their territory. Noticing something, the boy deduces that his father must have a direct source. And he's right. The man confirms that he will teach him these things gradually, praising his deduction. With a relaxed smile, the protagonist asks him to take it easy on the lessons. Internally, he is impressed to realize the truth. His father has an infiltrator working on Rennerut's side. As they observe the political landscape, a man comments that he understands what the king is trying to say, but highlights the difficulty of the situation. They are facing the powerful empire of Magnolia, and more specifically, Rainer Baldia's son, known as the strongest sword. Moreover, the territory of this man borders their own country, which makes the situation even more delicate. Despite this, he also recognizes that the current conditions are favorable. The narrative reveals that the Empire of Magnolia has two military pillars: the sword, represented by Marquis Rainer Baldia, and the shield, represented by Marquis Grade Kelvin. Even understanding the strategic value, the man hesitates, signaling that there are still risks. The noble Norris Tamuska positions himself firmly, saying that the most appropriate thing for his nation would be a marriage with the imperial family. Others around him support him, agreeing enthusiastically. However, not everyone shares the same view. One of the present figures realizes that Norris intends to use this marriage as an excuse to infiltrate the central politics of the empire and free Rennerut from its vassal status. Furthermore, he believes that Norris plans to go further, taking control of the empire from within. Reflecting alone, this character recognizes that Norris, as a proud dark elf, has always been upset by Rennerut not being treated equally. Now, he sees this plan as Norris's effort to change that, even if it puts the country at risk. Racist enters determined into the office, interrupting his father. Without beating around the bush, he confronts him, accusing him of planning to offer his younger sister, Farah, as a hostage to the Empire. The father tries to deflect the accusation, asking where he got such an absurd idea. But Races insists, making it clear that he heard it from Norris and won't ignore it. Even remembering that Farah is only 6 years old, and that no country would allow a marriage at that age, Races coldly declares that it doesn't matter. His focus is on the principle and the danger of the situation, not on his sister's age. Races stares at his father angrily, demanding to know why he has to go so far. The father firmly responds that it's to unite the countries, and that not everything follows fixed rules. Sometimes exceptions are necessary. He reminds Races that one day he will be king and must learn to analyze situations and make tough decisions. But Races, overcome by emotion, cannot accept this. Even in the face of political logic, he shouts that he still cannot agree with this decision. The father watches Races walk away and acknowledges that, despite being a good prince, he is still immature for letting his emotions take over. The previous outburst was proof that he is still a child. Races, visibly frustrated, accepts the order to calm down in his room. He apologizes for speaking too much, though not hiding his discontent. As he walks through the corridors, head down, he crosses paths with two figures. One of them catches his attention, making him stop for a moment. Races is surprised to see Farah out of her room, something unusual. The girl greets him cheerfully, calling him Anui, a loving way to say older brother. She explains that she is on her way to her mother's room, who called for her. Curious, Farah asks what he is doing there. Races answers with a forced smile, saying he was talking to their father but ended up being reprimanded and sent back to calm down. Surprised, Farah reacts with astonishment, not believing that their father really scolded him. Races watches Farah with affection, noticing how much she resembles their mother, Alita Sama. Despite her young age, Farah behaves with elegance and maturity, a result of the strict lessons she receives daily. While she smiles sweetly, holding a flower, Races thinks to himself. For him, Farah is his greatest source of pride and joy. Farah says goodbye politely, bowing to Races before heading off with her guard toward their mother's room. He watches silently as his sister walks away. With a firm look, Races strengthens his inner decision. He will not allow Farah to be neglected or used, no matter what. His determination is clear. He will do whatever it takes to protect her, at all costs. With a clenched fist and a determined look, Races makes a solemn promise. In front of the faces of those who marked his journey, allies, rivals, and, most importantly, his sister Farah, he swears with all his strength, "I swear, I will protect my little sister." Nothing will make him back down from this vow. He is ready to face any challenge to ensure Farah's safety. Rid is completely stunned by the flood of information he just received through the magic of memory. He despairs as he realizes how chaotic and confusing these memories are. At the same time, he explains that this new magic works like a link. Every time he talks to memory inside his mind, his mana is consumed, as if it were a paper-minute phone call. Even so, he continues to use the technique, curious to discover more. After summoning memory again, he asks what has been discovered about the main story of Tokerella, while trying not to get distracted by the mental sermon he's receiving in the process. The protagonist, Rid, tries to remember the main story of the Tokerella game, but mentally admits he played it with the skip dialogue function activated, so he doesn't remember much. He was addicted to the game, but spent more time in the extra mode than in the campaign. Trying to understand better, the protagonist decides to consult memory. But even with the help of magic, all he can access are confused and fragmented memories, like crumpled pieces of paper. Not even memory can organize the content in a useful way. He remembers that the game was in the Cinderella style, with princesses from various kingdoms as love interests. And one of the characters, probably from Renarut, was named Races, easy to train and use. Still, since he ignored the dialogues in the story, almost everything is now lost in his mind. The protagonist continues trying to understand the limits of the memory magic and asks what types of memories can be accessed. The answer is clear. Only memories from the past life that he actually paid attention to can be retrieved. Things like internet videos, school books, or any content viewed with conscious focus can be remembered. On the other hand, vague memories, like random conversations from strangers, ignored advertisements, or complaints from coworkers, are nearly impossible to recover, or would take a very long time. Even so, he insists on trying, asking memory to fix it. Reluctant but willing, memory accepts the challenge, comparing the task to assembling shredded paper, something nearly impossible, but not completely out of reach. During an intense training session, The protagonist, Rid, tries to keep up with his instructor's fast movements, but soon feels exhaustion setting in. He falls to the ground, exhausted, panting, and complaining about the difficulty of the exercise. As he recovers, the instructor watches closely and decides that it's time to take him to the next level. He announces that he will teach Rid how to strengthen his body using mana, something completely new to the boy, who reacts surprised upon hearing the term for the first time. The protagonist asks if just imagining himself getting stronger would be enough. However, his instructor responds that that is too vague. To strengthen the body with mana, two things are necessary: the ability to produce mana and a basic understanding of martial arts, meaning knowing how to move one's own body. The instructor explains that it's no use knowing how to use mana if the body doesn't follow. One must feel the body moving with mana flowing inside, until it becomes something natural and unconscious. He says that, among knights, it is common to repeat, "You need to feel, not think." Once control is mastered, breathing stabilizes, and the body almost never gets tired. Rid is impressed by this, but also frustrated, finding the reasoning too simplistic, typical of muscle heads. During the training, the protagonist notices something strange. He asks Rubens if he had been using mana reinforcement during all the lessons. Rubens confirms with a carefree smile, as if it were obvious. Rid is shocked as he realizes the reason he could never keep up. While he tired quickly, Rubens never got exhausted, no matter how much time passed. The difference was that Rubens used mana to maintain his stamina all the time. Lying on the ground, drained of energy, the protagonist finally understands why he could never defeat him. It was like fighting someone with infinite energy, while his own was limited from the start. Determined, the protagonist declares that as soon as he masters strengthening his body with mana, he will defeat his instructor. With a confident and challenging look, he makes it clear that he won't give up. Rubens, excited by the competitive spirit, eagerly accepts the challenge and proposes a new training, running across the training field while channeling mana through the body. For him, this is the perfect sports method, hard but effective. Even panting, Rid mentally prepares himself. To catch up with Rubens, he knows he will need to give everything he's got. During the training, the protagonist notices something different. He's tiring less than usual. Upon reflecting, he concludes that this is due to his magical training with Sandra, which is starting to show results. Rubens praises his progress, saying that he's learning fast. He points out how valuable it is for someone to follow both paths, meaning being talented in both magic and martial arts. Even surprised by the boy's evolution, Rubens admits that he's impressed that Rid has endured the training so far without using body strengthening. With humility, the protagonist jokes that maybe in 10 years, he'll be at his instructor's level. After running as fast as he could while circulating mana through his body, the protagonist prepares for the next stage of training. With Rubens leading the exercises, he begins performing push-ups, sit-ups, and other basic physical training, now always activating body strengthening with mana. Motivated, he mentally writes down his goal: defeat Rubens. The determination grows within him with each training session. Thus, the days of combat and preparation alongside Rubens continue, with the two constantly facing off, while the protagonist advances step by step toward his goal. The protagonist stares at Rubens confidently, determined to land a blow that day. But Rubens, always ahead, responds with a smile and throws the challenge back, reminding Rid that he still has much to learn. Despite all his effort, the boy barely tires. Since mastering body strengthening, the training has stopped being a burden and has become fun. He feels that something within him has changed. However, reality still weighs on him. The difference between them isn't just in technique, but also in experience, reach, weight, and size. Rid recognizes that, despite being stronger, he still isn't capable of defeating him, but he's getting closer. Even after so many defeats, the protagonist feels his will to win grow even more. Each fall only motivates him to keep trying. Determined to make use of the size difference between him and Rubens, he rushes forward, determined to close the gap and land at least one hit, whether it's a punch or a kick. Even exhausted, he doesn't give up. With his eyes fixed on the target, he reaffirms to himself he can still keep going. During the training, the protagonist is once again defeated by Rubens, who easily holds him and warns that he's already disarmed. Despite this, he praises the boy's persistence for not giving up even without the sword. Still with energy, the boy asks for one more round, but Rubens ends the session, reminding him that fighting against someone of his size would be more viable, at least for now. The protagonist, surprised and frustrated, realizes that he still has a long way to go, but that he's making progress. Rubens comments that everything done so far was just a warm-up, which surprises the protagonist. He hears that a special instructor just arrived and becomes curious. While thinking about how intense the training had already seemed, the boy is shocked by the idea that it was just the beginning. And soon after, a mysterious figure appears, apologizing for the delay. The protagonist begins to realize that the real challenge is just beginning. The boy is surprised to see the imposing figure of his father arriving, the very Rainer-sama. He looks visibly nervous, but also excited by his presence. Rainer calmly asks if he's already gotten used to the training, maintaining his firm and serious posture. His father's sudden appearance marks the beginning of an even more intense phase for the protagonist. The boy is surprised to discover that after facing Rubens, his next opponent will be his own father. Even with the nervousness, he feels a strong desire to know how powerful his father really is, and how much he has evolved himself. Rainer asks that his son show everything he's got, even using body strengthening with mana. The boy hesitates for a second, but soon adopts a determined stance, wielding his sword with a confident smile, ready to start the duel. The boy rushes at his father using body strengthening, and his sword with speed and firmness. He attacks with determination, showing how much he's grown. Rainer blocks the blows and watches his son with surprise and admiration. He recognizes that, for someone so young, the boy's combat skills and mana control are impressive. Deep down, he even feels a certain fear. His own son is already a serious threat in battle. The boy, even panting and having taken a few blows, doesn't give up. He pushes himself up from the ground with determination, saying that it's not over yet. His father smiles, pleased with his firm response. Now it's the father's turn to attack. He assumes a combat stance and warns that he's coming for him this time. The boy, with his focused gaze, prepares to face the challenge head-on, even knowing that the difference in level is still great. The boy, already exhausted and panting, continues to fight with all his strength. After a precise blow, he is thrown to the ground. He falls to his knees, trembling, barely able to keep himself upright. Despite this, the father recognizes the boy's effort, saying that he did well and passed the wooden sword test. The boy, even surprised by the intensity of the fight and feeling a fatigue he had never experienced before, understands that the difference between fighting Rubens and fighting his father is much bigger than he imagined. After passing the test with the wooden sword, the boy's father says he wants to see more, his determination. The boy appears confused, but understands that his father is talking about mental strength, keeping calm, and moving forward even in tough situations. The man confirms and says that this strength is essential in real battles, where keeping composure could be the difference between life and death. He advises the boy to understand his own limits above all else, and a new challenge seems about to begin. The boy's father inspects a real sword, making sure it's in good condition. This surprises the boy, who asks nervously what his father plans to do with the weapon. Instead of answering directly, the man simply smiles and says that the boy seems worthy of being trained. Then he asks for something serious, that the boy stay still, maintain his posture, and not look away, no matter what happens. The protagonist, even nervous, accepts the challenge firmly. The protagonist's father prepares with seriousness, assuming a combat stance, and warning that he's going to start. The boy feels something strange in the air, an intense pressure he had never felt before. His father's aura is overwhelming, completely different from everything he's faced so far. Even standing still, the protagonist realizes that he's facing something far beyond what he imagined. The protagonist's father releases a crushing presence as he draws his sword firmly. The energy around distorts, and the air becomes heavy. It's a real combat aura. The boy immediately feels the impact of that presence. It wasn't just a show of strength, it was the intent to kill. His body freezes in the face of his father's true murderous intent. The boy falls to his knees, panting and visibly shaken. He knows his father didn't intend to hurt him, but facing a real sword and feeling a true intent to kill for the first time was overwhelming. Still, his father recognizes his courage, considering that he was as firm as one could expect for someone his age. The boy admits his mistake humbly, and his father naturally says that everyone starts like this. It's an important step in the boy's maturation. The boy listens attentively as his father explains that the next step in training will be mastering the grit, courage, and steadiness in the face of fear. He learns that he shouldn't ignore fear but accept it and get used to it. In a real battle, it's this determination that determines survival. With his eyes full of will and his spirit renewed, the boy accepts the challenge with his head held high, determined to get stronger. Rubens comments, with a smile, that Reiner-sama's methods are unique, different from what he could teach due to his position. Even so, he cheers for the boy, encouraging him to do his best. Reiner, firm and confident, warns that he's going to attack again, asking the boy to keep his eyes open and observe each movement carefully. The next strike will be part of the training, and he needs to face it head-on. The boy, who is the protagonist, faces the next strike from his father. The blade advances with speed, and he feels as if he could really be cut. Fear takes over, making his body tremble. But he understands that this training is necessary. If he wants to survive on a real battlefield one day, he needs to endure this type of pressure now. Even with the terror, he tries to remain firm. The protagonist fights against the fear as he faces his father's sword. Even trembling, he resists the impulse to close his eyes. Determined, he understands that he needs to watch attentively each movement, every trace of the blade. It's the only way to learn. He decides to keep his eyes open, ready to witness the path his father's sword takes. The boy concentrates and keeps his eyes wide open, not looking away for a single moment. Even panting and tired, he holds firm. His father recognizes the effort and comments that he's already getting used to it well. However, before he can relax, the next challenge is announced. The boy, surprised to still have more ahead of him, responds firmly, ready to continue. The next challenge is announced. The boy, named Rid, needs to cross a line and reach Rubens. His father, with the sword in hand, warns that he will do everything to prevent him. Rubens cheers for him, while the boy accepts the mission with determination, even knowing it won't be easy to keep up with his father's attacks. Still, he prepares with courage, ready to try. The boy charges forward with determination, but his father reacts with impressive speed. He cuts the path with a swift strike, forcing the boy to dodge quickly. Surprised by the speed, the boy can barely keep up with the movements, realizing that he underestimated the challenge. The boy recovers from the previous blow and fixes his gaze on his father, who stands waiting for him. Even tired, he feels that now he has a chance. His body has gotten used to the rhythm, and the desire to win grows. Determined, he promises to himself that he will overcome his father's sword, and then take the next step. The boy runs with a smile of pure joy upon seeing Rubens. They call each other enthusiastically, happy to meet again. Then, he throws himself into his friend's arms, showing the strong bond between them. Rubens, moved to tears, congratulates the boy for making it to him. Meanwhile, the protagonist notices the brutal difference between the previous training and the seriousness of his father's fencing. Reiner, watching, smiles with satisfaction and decides to end the training for the day, promising to participate in future lessons more often. Reiner declares that intense training will happen every time, leaving the boy shocked. Rubens watches everything with a smile, commenting that Reiner always wanted to express how happy he was to train with his son. The boy realizes this, surprised, and understands that his father, despite being strict, is showing affection in his own way. Little Mel runs up to her older brother, calling him in a hurry. He turns around, surprised by her approach. One of the women asks what happened, but Mel simply approaches, making a pouting expression, clearly upset about something. Mel storms forward, hitting her father's arms while accusing him of bullying her brother. She screams that she hates him, leaving everyone surprised. The maid apologizes, explaining that Melody insisted on seeing her brother even during training, but she asked the girl to just observe. Rubens comments on the boy's state, full of scratches, while Mel continues to pout and cry, saying again that she hates him. Mel pulls her brother with a smile, announcing that training is over. Even angry before, now she seems excited. Rid smiles affectionately, but thinks she's still mad at their father. He mentally praises her for being a good sister, even without understanding everything. Rid thinks about why his father was so strict. It was to help him. Still, Mel remains firm, saying that she still hates her father. A few days later, Rid's father laments for believing Melody still hates him. However, to his surprise, she suddenly appears, enters the room, and apologizes for saying she hated him. Her sincerity moves the father so much that he starts crying, completely touched. Everyone recognizes Mel's gesture as a great feat. The protagonist of the story prepares to depart. The younger sister, emotional, asks him to return safely and hugs him tightly. While the father watches the farewell alongside the other children, the father says goodbye to his children, promising to return as soon as possible. While the girl shows trust in his words, the protagonist, with white hair, also says goodbye with a smile, being warned about the use of his magic. Meanwhile, another young girl asks to be entrusted with the responsibility of looking after the younger sister. The scene shows another young man leaving toward Renarut, full of determination. At the same time, we see family members and acquaintances saying farewell, including the younger sister who waves enthusiastically as she sees him leave. As the journey continues in his carriage, the narrative shifts to the demon forest in Renarut, where two monsters meet, setting the stage for the upcoming events. In the forest, a slime is caught by surprise by a huge green snake. At a disadvantage and afraid of being devoured, it tries to escape, but the beast advances, ready to attack. When the snake is about to strike the defenseless slime, a wolf appears and intercepts the attack. The two monsters engage in a fierce battle, while the slime watches the scene in surprise. The black wolf defeats the snake with ease, showing its strength. The slime watches in awe, admiring the skill and imposing presence of the creature that just saved it. In the demon forest, slimes are seen as fragile and numerous creatures placed at the bottom of the food chain. However, this particular slime does not divide like the others, continuously accumulating mana. This process makes it unique and awakens a new emotion within it. The slime, surrounded by predators in the darkness of the forest, experiences something it had never felt before. Faced with the threat of being devoured, it develops its very first true emotion, fear. The slime, doomed to live as prey, tries to hide and survive alone after being hunted by its natural enemy, the green snake. While searching for refuge, it ends up crossing paths once again with the imposing black wolf. The black wolf moves forward through the forest, but notices that the small slime continues to follow it. Annoyed and confused by the persistence of the fragile creature, it questions the reason for being followed. The black wolf, after hesitating, allows the slime to accompany it. Although it tries to justify the decision as keeping it as emergency food, deep down, it is its conscience that won't allow it to abandon the small creature. Thus, the two begin an unlikely companionship in the forest. The wolf returns to its den and is surprised to find it clean and organized. Unlike before, when it was full of bones and remains of prey, it realizes that the slime was responsible for devouring everything, turning the mess into its meal. The wolf, who hated cleaning, offers food to the slime as a way of thanking it for leaving the den spotless. Then, it allows the slime to stay there, on the condition that it keeps the place clean. Thus, the two begin to consolidate their coexistence. Over time, the wolf hunted for food, while the slime kept the den clean. Even though they could not communicate in words, they began to understand each other's intentions, creating a balanced and curiously harmonious coexistence. And as the slime tries to wake the black wolf to go hunting, but the wolf, lazy, prefers to keep sleeping and only move when hungry. The scene shows their calm routine and curious companionship. During their time together, the slime awakens the ability to communicate, surprising the wolf. Although it had never seen a slime speak, the wolf concludes this happened because of the creature's strong desire to be able to talk to it. This revelation marks a new stage in their relationship. The slime expresses the desire to transform, to resemble the wolf. The wolf, in a teasing and challenging tone, encourages it to try, and even promises to accept it as his wife, if it manages to become attractive. Excited, the slime takes the promise seriously and decides to work hard for it every day. Over time, the companionship between the black wolf and the slime attracts attention. Rumors arise that the two live together as companions in the demon forest, and even that they might be partners. Some believe that, because of this, they could be worth a high price if captured. One night, the slime draws the black wolf's attention, saying it had something important to show. Surprised, the wolf watches as the small creature begins to reveal a new ability before him. The slime astonishes by taking on the form of a radiant white wolf, resembling its companion. The black wolf watches intently, impressed by the unexpected transformation and the glow emanating from the new appearance. Anicap, transformed into a beautiful white wolf, the slime asks for its companion's opinion. Surprised and embarrassed, the black wolf admits that the new form is indeed cute, remembering the promise made earlier. Excited, the slime presses for the kept word, reinforcing their bond. The slime, in its new form, reminds the wolf of the promise made. Moved, the wolf thinks about all the effort of the small creature. learning to speak, transforming, and even trying to resemble him. It realizes that appearance or species does not matter, only the feeling of attraction and connection. Decided, it chooses to reward the slime's dedication. Under the moonlight, the black wolf declares its desire to stay by the slime's side forever. It asks the slime to become its mate, its wife, sealing their bond once and for all. The slime, still insecure about its true form, asks if the wolf is really certain of that choice. The wolf, firm and resolute, declares that appearance does not matter. It accepts it as its companion forever. Reaffirming the promise without hesitation, the slime, in the form of a white wolf, declares its love, and the black wolf reciprocates. United, the two form an unusual couple that begins to live in harmony in the demon forest. However, the narrative suggests that something unexpected is about to happen. The black wolf and the slime, now companions, continue living together until destiny leads them to meet a human with mysterious power. However, this new part of the journey is yet to come, reserved for a future story. The group continues their journey toward Renarut, relying on the help of knights and the Christie Company to protect the supply route. Among the travelers are the protagonist, his father Rubens, Diana, and other knights. During the trip, the protagonist suffers from the discomfort of long hours in the carriage, while the group pauses in a town to spend the night. Tired from the journey, the protagonist rests in his room when he begins accessing memories linked to his quest. He searches for information about someone important and discovers the existence of a prince named Racis Renarut, tied to the country he is heading to, awakening even more curiosity about the journey's destination. The protagonist visualizes the image of a young prince with bronze skin, typical of dark elves, black hair, and striking yellow eyes. He decides to memorize him, predicting a possible future encounter. Observing his serious expression, he concludes that the prince has a tsundere personality, which may make coexistence difficult. Still, he is impressed by the boy's striking appearance. While resting in his room, the protagonist receives an unexpected visit from Chris. She apologizes for disturbing him and offers some candies made with medicinal herbs, explaining that they help against travel sickness, since she also suffers from it on long journeys. And, surprised and grateful, he appreciates the kindness of the gesture. The protagonist is amazed by Chris's kindness, even comparing her to a goddess. She smiles and explains that she always carries those candies with her, hoping that he likes the taste. Grateful and encouraged, he promises to do his best when they resume the journey the next day. During the trip, the protagonist sees the border of Renarut approaching. He thinks that, although it is not a central point in the main story of the world of Tokerella, the place held remarkable elements that stirred great interest among players. At the entrance of the Renarut border, the group encounters the Dark Elves guarding the area. Armed and uniformed, they exude an intimidating presence, reinforcing the importance and vigilance of that passage. The Dark Elf guards stand out because of their imposing uniforms, mixing elements of Eastern and Western cultures. Fascinated by the sight, the protagonist does not hide his admiration and considers the scene incredibly stylish. Upon entering Renarut, the protagonist observes in awe the cultural fusion of the place, reminiscent of Japan after the Meiji Restoration. People wear both kimonos and Western clothes, reflecting the mixture of traditions. His father explains that this diversity was born from the alliance between Renarut and Magnolia after a major incident, encouraging him to take advantage of the experience to broaden his horizons. During the trip, the protagonist sees rice fields in Renarut, something common there but non-existent in Magnolia. Surprised and excited, he thinks about organizing a supply line to import rice to Baldia, revealing his longing for Japanese food. The protagonist observes the great castle of Renarut, thinking that it is there where the princess and those opposing her marriage are waiting for him. Despite his worries, he tries to focus, still carrying with him the nostalgia of the Japanese food he misses so much. The group arrives at the guest palace, where they will stay during their time in Renarut. An attendant greets them and informs them that the servants will be called to take care of them. The protagonist, exhausted from the journey, shows his weariness as he observes the luxurious place. The group is welcomed by Zach Riverton, the one in charge of the main building and of looking after them during their stay in Renarut. He is praised for his work in transmitting information between the capital and the city, but humbly states that he merely fulfilled his duty. The protagonist observes the scene, surprised by their familiarity. The protagonist arrives at the guest palace, designed to resemble the culture of Magnolia, and discovers that there is even a hot spring. Delighted, he sees the place as perfect and ideal for resting. Exhausted from the long journey, the protagonist finally arrives at his room and throws himself onto the bed with relief. enjoying the well-deserved rest after the journey. Diana appears dressed as a maid, revealing that she will act both as a bodyguard and an attendant during the stay in Renarut. The protagonist, surprised, accepts her help, though he finds it curious that someone who also needs to fight would wear such clothing. Diana reveals several hidden weapons in her maid outfit, showing that despite her appearance, she is fully prepared to fight and protect. The protagonist is shocked at the quantity and at the ease with which she handles all of them. Frightened, the boy asks Diana to stop showing her hidden weapons. He questions why a knight would carry assassin equipment. Diana, serious, replies that even some knights make use of such weaponry. Diana reflects on the physical difference between men and women, admitting that in direct battles she often could not win. For that reason, she began to use assassin weapons to compensate for this disadvantage, determined to join the Order of Knights at any cost. Diana admits that her motivation to work so hard came from Rubens. Since childhood, by seeing him fight and dedicate himself, despite being fragile and a crybaby, she also forced herself to give her best. Inspired by his determination, Diana insists that her dedication was not only for Rubens, but also for herself. During the stay in Renarut, she officially takes on the role of maid and protector, even being assigned to share a room with Rid. Despite her attempt to act discreetly, her presence is far too strong to be ignored. Rid decides to rest after the long journey, asking to be awakened should anything happen. The mansion where they are lodged is shown in its grandeur, illuminated at night. While vigilance continues, the princess is informed that the Baldia family has arrived at the guest palace. She listens calmly and acknowledges the news, showing that she had been waiting for this moment. A warrior reflects on when he was assigned as the princess's bodyguard. He understands that this was merely a way for his family to get rid of him, driven by his brother's jealousy of his swordsmanship. Despite the resentment of being driven away from his country, he accepted his fate in silence. Asuna Lamarck, determined to perfect her sword, became the princess's protector at the age of 12. While she trained intensely, the princess received strict instruction to fulfill her role as heir to the kingdom. The princess was pressured not to make mistakes, being forced to represent a perfect example for the people. Even in the face of harsh orders from her superiors, Asuna noticed the weight of the responsibility imposed on the heir while trying to intercede. The princess endured harsh days of training from an early age, learning not only about her own kingdom, but also about the culture and structure of the Magnolia Empire. The lessons were intense and lasted from dawn until night. Living with her during this period, Asuna began to desire to be someone who could support her amidst so many demands. The princess, despite the hardships of the rigorous training she faced every day, maintained a calm and optimistic demeanor. She acknowledged the weight of the lessons, but told herself she had to endure and do her best. At the same time, she showed gratitude for Asuna's concern, displaying her strength and resilience even under constant pressure. The princess, even while giving her all in her duties and training, carried a deep pain. Unable to see her father or mother, she felt abandoned and sunk into loneliness. Her tears revealed the weight of responsibility and the lack of affection that consumed her inside. The princess, overcome with sorrow, still heard her mother's words echoing in her mind. Her destiny was to marry the crown prince of Magnolia. Even if there was someone in her heart, she was forbidden to grow attached. Between tears and obedience, she merely confirmed to herself the duty she carried, suffocated by the burden of responsibility. Lying in her chambers, the princess reflected on her life controlled by her mother, where every choice from clothes to meals had never been her own. Still, facing the arranged meeting, she wished at least to decide on her own whether or not to open her heart. She also recalled the first time she had been allowed to leave the palace, when she secretly traveled to Baldia's territory before the marriage. Amazed and lost in the outside world, the princess recalled a defining moment in her life, the day she was helped by a boy during her brief experience in the outside world. While walking, she wondered if he was still in that land and wished that he was well. That memory awakened in her a feeling of hope and curiosity about meeting him again. The boy found himself before an impressive painting, depicting an elf with great delicacy and beauty. Enchanted by the work, he marveled at the artist's skill, reflecting on the hope of a future encounter. The image awakened in him a deep sense of admiration and a premonition of connection. Rid admired the painting, amazed by its beauty, until he was surprised by the arrival of others. He then discovered that the woman portrayed was not just a distant figure, but Alita Sama, concubine of Elias Sama. The revelation left him intrigued, connecting the artwork to someone real and important in the palace. Rid discovers that the woman in the painting was not just any concubine, but Alita Sama, mother of Princess Farah herself. Shocked, He is embarrassed for having been so enchanted by the image of his future fiancée, Yi's mother. The butler, however, comments that Farah resembles Alita greatly, suggesting that if Rid liked the painting, he would certainly also be pleased with the princess. Rid speaks with Zack, questioning his opinion about the marriage with the princess. Zack avoids taking a direct stance but wishes for her happiness, which Rid interprets as a positive sign. He realizes that not everyone in Renaroot is against the Baldia family, and that even King Elias seems to support the union. Rid concludes that if the princess truly resembles the woman in the portrait so much, he might fall in love with her at first sight. Excited, Rid imagines the possibility of falling in love with the princess, and asks Zack if he would support their union should that happen. With a confident and almost theatrical posture, he tries to win his approval, but Zack remains silent, not clearly revealing his stance. Satisfied, Rid manages to extract from Zack a promise of support, celebrating his victory confidently. Meanwhile, elsewhere, his father speaks with someone who expresses high expectations for Rid's future, highlighting that the young man has a promising destiny ahead. Rid secures the support of Zack Riverton, who promises his full backing. Zack quickly realizes the importance of his position in Renaroot's politics and understands Rid's intention to strengthen the bond between him and the Politics. Princess. Meanwhile, Rainer reflects on his son's boldness, realizing how he managed to secure such a commitment from such an influential man. Zack, in turn, is revealed to be a relative of Eltia, the king's concubine, as well as the current head of the Riverton family, showing the political weight of his alliance. Zack Riverton, head of Renaroot's intelligence network and close ally of King Elias, declares full support for Rid. This alliance further strengthens the boy's position, granting him an influential collaborator within the kingdom. Meanwhile, preparations for the audience with the king move forward. Norris meets with Racis to update him on the progress of a secret plan. The operation is proceeding without issues, and both acknowledge that it is only possible thanks to the collaboration and acceptance of the proposed idea. Racis reflects on his father's absence and the attention given to Eltia. In secret, it was decided that Farah would marry Magnolia, while he remained in Renaroot. Reyes and Farah are siblings of different mothers, and Norris, a relative of his mother Rizel, tries to manipulate him to use him as a political pawn. Norris poisons Racis's thoughts by saying that the king only loves Eltia and despises his mother, Rizel. He reinforces that the king rarely visits the queen. While he goes every day to Eltia, Racis, in turn, begins to be affected by the sadness he sees in his mother. Racis, filled with rage and sorrow at seeing his mother suffer, vows never to be a king like his father. In this moment of fragility, Norris comforts him, guaranteeing that he will be by his side, and promising that if he follows his advice, he will become not only a great king, but also a great man. On the eve of an important event, Norris entrusts responsibility to Racis, warning him to act carefully. Determined, Racis reaffirms his will to protect his younger sister, showing his firm decision not to fail in his role. A shadowy figure watches closely the prince's situation, confirming that he suspects nothing and trusts completely. The informant receives the order to immediately report any change, revealing the web of manipulation and surveillance surrounding the young heir. Norris appears with a confident and sinister smile, satisfied with the course of his plans. Convinced that everything is unfolding as expected, he shows contempt for the Magnolians, revealing his ambition and arrogance as he prepares for the next steps of his scheme. While the group continued their journey, Farah tried on Western-style clothes for the first time. Although she found the outfit a little different from what she was used to, she received compliments on her appearance, gaining more confidence as she realized the clothing suited her perfectly. Farah continued trying on different outfits and eventually wore an elegant wedding dress. When her companions saw her fully dressed, they praised her appearance and commented that any suitor would be captivated by such an image. Although slightly embarrassed, Farah felt pleased as she realized the dress truly suited her. While wearing the elegant dress, Farah received sincere compliments about her beauty, making it clear that her appearance was even more charming than usual. Their words increased her confidence and made her smile with relief. Shortly afterward, someone knocked on the door, interrupting the moment and announcing the arrival of a visitor. Upon receiving a visit from her mother, Farah thanked her for the beautiful dress she had received. However, the conversation quickly took on a serious tone as her mother reminded her of the political importance of the marriage, making it clear that this union involved not only their family, but also the prestige of Renaroot. Faced with the woman's cold and distant attitude, it became evident that the relationship between mother and daughter was marked by very little display of affection. Her mother explained that if Farah displayed all her elegance and impeccable behavior during the ceremony, this marriage could open the way for future alliances with the imperial family. Even while understanding the responsibility placed on her shoulders, Farah accepted the mission in silence. After the conversation, her mother left the room, while the others noticed that the young girl was emotionally shaken and approached her to check if she was all right. Asuna explained that the marriage was only a political formality and that the groom was still merely a possible candidate, leaving it up to Farah to decide what she would do after getting to know him better. Hearing this, Farah showed some relief and thanked her friend for her support and kindness. Then, Asuna commented that she knew very little about the boy, knowing only his name, which made her even more curious about the meeting that was about to take place. After learning the name of the man chosen for the possible marriage, Farah repeated his name in her thoughts and began reflecting on who he truly was. An important noble requested permission to continue a conversation that had begun days earlier with the royal family. Meanwhile, the royal family discussed the princess's future and showed interest in evaluating whether the marquis's son was truly worthy of becoming her fiancé. Although they acknowledged that he came from a noble lineage, they also decided to act cautiously before reaching any conclusions. At the same time, one of those present believed that the princess would hardly find someone who met her expectations, though everyone knew that a marriage with a member of the royal family could bring enormous political benefits to the kingdom. Before the important meeting, Rid spent a long time preparing himself in front of the mirror, worried about his appearance and wanting to make a good impression. His maid soon noticed the young boy's nervousness and teased him about the situation, comparing his anxiety to that of a young girl about to meet her future fiancé for the first time, leaving Rid completely embarrassed. While Rid continued worrying about his own appearance, his maid tried to reassure him, saying that he was a handsome young boy and that he only needed to act naturally. Amid the teasing, she even commented that if Rid were a girl, he would probably receive countless marriage proposals, leaving the boy completely flustered by so many compliments. When the time for the meeting arrived, Rid was informed that Rainer was already waiting for him. He then left the room and began accompanying him through the mansion's corridors. Along the way, Rainer started a conversation, revealing that some of his friends had mentioned something important about the young boy, awakening Rid's curiosity about the matter. As they walked through the mansion, Rainer shared important information about the kingdom's political situation. He explained that the leader of the opposition faction had advised the prince and mentioned that there were rumors about a possible union between Eltia and Farah with members of the imperial family. Although many uncertainties still remained, Rainer believed that this group remained neutral and warned Rid to act carefully since no one knew their true intentions. Rainer suggested that the best strategy might be to temporarily shake Prince Rias's confidence. Although the idea surprised Rid, he explained that he did not intend to hurt him, but merely create an opportunity to distance him from Norris's influence, someone the prince deeply admired. In that way, he believed it would be possible to bring him closer to their side and change the direction of the political situation. Rainer explained that the goal was to destroy only Rias's excessive confidence, not to harm him physically. According to him, the prince usually placed the good of the kingdom above everything else, but his admiration for Norris had become exaggerated, causing his actions to contradict his own ideals. In addition, Rainer believed that Rhesus was emotionally unstable, and that it was precisely this weakness that needed to be broken in order to free him from Norris's influence. Rainer asked Rid to view that mission as a request from a noble who wished to protect the future of Renarut, assuring him that he himself would take care of all the remaining details. Shortly afterward, he surprised Rid by giving him an unexpected gift, explaining that he had initially believed the young boy would try to avoid the subject, but decided to reward him for accepting such an important responsibility for the kingdom. Rid understood the importance of the mission and accepted that he would do everything he could to help, receiving Rainer's thanks for his cooperation. Before ending the conversation, he took the opportunity to ask why Prince Riasis admired Norris so much. However, Rainer revealed that even he did not know the answer, stating that the reason was beyond his knowledge. Upon arriving at the agreed location, Rid was scolded for being late and quickly apologized. Then, the group set out for the meeting, while Zack decided not to accompany them, saying that he would wait to hear the results afterward. Without understanding the true reason behind that decision, Rid simply watched the two of them leave, curious about Zack's attitude. The group arrived at the location where the audience with the king would be held, and learned that all the nobles of the kingdom were expected to gather in the Great Royal Hall, while the main castle was reserved as a military fortress. After being received by the guards, Marquis Rainer announced his arrival and requested an audience with King Elias, marking the beginning of the important political meeting. Upon arriving at the audience location, the group was received by those responsible for palace security. Before entering, they were informed that only some of them would be allowed to participate in the meeting, and that everyone had to leave their weapons outside. Thus, Rid, Rubens, Diana, and Marquis Rainer proceeded to the audience with the king, while the others remained waiting outside. Upon entering the audience building, Rid was impressed by the architecture inspired by Japanese style. Before moving forward, the group had to remove their shoes as a sign of respect for the local traditions. They were then led to the entrance of the Great Hall, where they were informed that everyone present was already waiting for their arrival so the meeting could begin. As Rid and his companions crossed the long corridor toward the audience hall, they passed between rows of soldiers and nobles, immediately drawing the attention of everyone present. Looks of curiosity, distrust, interest, and suspicion fell upon the group, revealing the importance of that meeting. Even feeling the pressure of the atmosphere, Rid continued forward beside Marquis Rainer, preparing himself to finally face the meeting that would define his political future. Upon entering the audience hall, the group realized that only one chair had been prepared. One of the officials explained that only Marquis Rainer had been granted permission for a direct audience with the king, which was why only one seat had been arranged. Faced with the explanation, Rainer accepted the situation without objection, while Rid carefully observed the influence and authority that the man held within the court. Before the audience began, Rainer asked Rid for his opinion on the situation and assured him that he would keep him by his side throughout the entire meeting. As he observed the king's expression, Rid realized that he seemed extremely irritated, which increased his tension even further. Despite the heavy atmosphere, the boy concluded that, for some reason, the royal family seemed to show an unusual interest in him. Noticing the tension filling the room, Rid's companions became indignant at the way he was being treated and almost lost their composure. Rid, however, managed to calm them before the situation worsened. Then, following Marquis Rainer's instructions, he bowed respectfully before the royal family, showing courtesy and respect as the audience officially began. With all the formality required by the court, the arrival of Marquis Rainer Baldia was officially announced before the king and the nobles present. Rainer advanced to the center of the room, accompanied by Rid, who remained respectfully by his side, while all eyes turned toward the pair. After the initial bow, the king allowed everyone to raise their heads, revealing the presence of the royal family before the visitors. Rid carefully observed King Elias, Prince Riesis, and Princess Farah for the first time, understanding the importance of that meeting. Then, Elias greeted Marquis Rainer, apologized for the delay caused by everyone's interest in meeting the young visitor, and confirmed that Rid was the Marquis's son and the possible candidate to become the princess's future fiancé. Before the royal family, Rid formally introduced himself as the son of Marquis Rainer Baldia and thanked them for the opportunity to meet Princess Farah, showing respect and courtesy. After hearing his introduction, the king commented that the two of them were the same age, confirming that both were 6 years old. He then asked Farah herself to introduce herself as well, beginning the first official contact between the two children. Following the king's request, Farah formally introduced herself as the princess of the kingdom of Renarut and the daughter of King Elias. As she finished her introduction with a gentle smile, she left Rid completely captivated, visibly surprised and speechless before the young princess's beauty and delicacy. Rid greeted Farah politely and became curious when he noticed that the princess's ears moved according to her emotions. After the introductions, King Elias declared that he hoped to build a friendly relationship with Rid in the future. He then went straight to the true reason for the audience and asked what the boy thought about the possible union between him and Princess Farah. Surprised to receive such an important question, Rid was momentarily left without a reaction and began thinking carefully about how to respond before the entire royal family. While the royal family waited for his answer, Riesis tried to end the discussion, stating that there was no point in pressuring such a young child. However, the king insisted on hearing Rid's opinion. Observing the prince's attitude and remembering the advice he had received, Rid concluded that the best strategy would be to act in a way that went against Norris's expectations, believing this would be the best way to achieve his goal. Before the entire court, Rid firmly declared that the union between the Baldia and Renarut families should happen no matter what. His answer completely surprised everyone present, as they had not expected such a direct declaration from a child. Intrigued by those words, the king asked Rid to continue explaining his reasoning, while everyone waited attentively for the rest of his response. Rid explained that the territories of Baldia and Renarut were neighbors, and that strengthening the relationship between them through marriage would make both realms much stronger against possible external threats. When the king questioned whether that meant he distrusted the Magnolia Empire, Rid immediately denied that interpretation. Instead, he argued that even as allies, no kingdom could guarantee immediate assistance in every situation. While a direct alliance with Renarut would significantly increase the security of Baldia's border region and benefit both sides, Rid continued explaining that the territory of Baldia had the autonomy to quickly mobilize its own army in emergency situations. For that reason, a marriage between the two families would allow Renarut to receive immediate military support without depending on the decisions of the Magnolia Empire. He also emphasized that this union would serve as a powerful form of deterrence against invaders, because any threat to Renarut would be treated as a direct threat to the Baldia family, strengthening the security of both sides. Rid reinforced that a formal alliance alone would not guarantee a swift response in the event of an invasion. He explained that Baldia could only immediately mobilize its army to protect another territory if there were a direct family bond between the two houses. With that, he demonstrated that a marriage between the families would allow a much faster military reaction than any ordinary treaty. At the end of his explanation, Rid asked Marquis Rainer himself to confirm his words, and his father agreed with the analysis, impressing everyone present even more. After hearing the entire explanation, Rainer confirmed that although a child normally should not understand such complex matters, Rid was correct in stating that an alliance through marriage would represent a much stronger form of protection between the two territories. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Rid revealed that there were still other benefits to this union, but explained that they could only be revealed after the wedding ceremony, awakening even more curiosity among everyone present. Upon hearing that there were still more hidden advantages in that proposal, the king burst into laughter and praised Rainer for having such a brilliant son. He commented that if Rid were a young boy from another country, it would make him lose sleep from worry. Meanwhile, Rainer simply replied that the king was exaggerating, although it was clear that everyone had been deeply impressed by the intelligence and strategic vision shown by the boy. Impressed by Rid's maturity, the king began addressing him by name, thanking him for the valuable ideas that could benefit the kingdom. Rheasus also acknowledged that the conversation had broadened his view of the political situation, while Norris admitted that he had underestimated Rainer. Upon realizing that Rid possessed intelligence for both strategy and action, Norris finally understood the young boy's true ability and began to see him with much greater respect. After praising Rid's intelligence, the king asked to see whether the boy also had talent in the martial arts, inviting him to demonstrate his abilities. Even without expecting this, Rid accepted the challenge and headed to the arena, surprised that a simple meeting with the princess had turned into a combat demonstration before the royal family. Before the fight, Diana handed Rid a wooden sword, chosen especially for him, explaining that the weapon was safe and reliable. Realizing that someone was trying to sabotage him with inferior equipment, Rid thanked her and entered the fight prepared. While Rid prepared for the battle, Diana asked him to defeat his opponent without mercy. However, shortly before the fight began, they were informed that his opponent had been changed at the last minute, surprising everyone. When the match was announced, Rid discovered that his opponent would be Prince Rheasus himself. Surprised by the change, he soon remembered the advice he had received and realized that this was the perfect opportunity to shake the prince's confidence. Determined, Rid prepared to face Rheasus before the entire court. Before the fight began, Rid realized that Zack already knew his opponent would be Prince Rheasus. Without showing any concern, he smiled, which irritated the prince even more. Convinced that Rid was underestimating his abilities, Rheasus prepared for the fight, determined to defeat him. Before the duel began, the king explained the rules of the fight and stated that the match would only end when one of them gave up or became unable to continue. However, before the start, Rid raised his hand and asked to speak, saying that he had a proposal. Rid proposed that the fight should only end when he himself considered the match over, without interference from anyone else. The king accepted the condition, authorizing the duel according to the boy's request, to the surprise of those present. Rheasus tried to provoke Rid with insults and offenses against his family. However, when he mentioned his mother's illness, he managed to strike a sensitive point, causing Rid's calm expression to disappear completely. Rheasus continued provoking Rid with increasingly offensive insults, trying to make him lose control before the fight even began. Faced with those cruel words, Rid remained silent, but his expression showed that his patience was reaching its limit. Rid remained calm in the face of the provocations against himself and against Baldia, but he could not ignore the insults directed at his mother, who was fighting a serious illness. Realizing that those words had been used deliberately to provoke him, he finally decided to take the fight seriously. The duel finally began, and Rheasus still tried to intimidate Rid, offering him a chance to give up before getting hurt. Without being shaken by the provocations, Rid responded calmly, making it clear that words were all the prince had to offer before the real fight. Rid answered the provocation coldly, irritating Rheasus even more. Consumed by anger, the prince lost his composure and launched himself into the attack, beginning the confrontation. Rheasus advanced with a powerful strike, but Rid dodged at the last instant with ease, surprising the prince from the very first attack. In the first exchange, Rid knocked Rheasus down with extreme ease and pointed his wooden sword at the fallen prince. Even after being defeated right at the beginning, Rheasus refused to accept the humiliation and tried to get up, while Rid provoked him by asking whether that was all he was capable of. Rheasus refused to accept defeat and attacked again with everything he had. But Rid remained calm, realizing that his strikes were predictable and full of openings. Even while being pressured, the boy continued dominating the fight without showing any difficulty. When their swords crossed, Rheasus believed he would win by using his superior physical strength. However, Rid immediately noticed that intention and remained completely calm, ready to turn the situation in his favor. With a quick and precise movement, Rid slipped away from the pressure of the swords, threw Rheasus off balance, and sent him crashing to the ground once again, increasing his advantage in the duel even further. Rid pointed his sword at the prince, and stated that he talked more than he fought. While everyone watched in surprise at the boy's absolute dominance, Rheasus finally realized the enormous difference in skill between them. With Rheasus completely dominated, Rid revealed that the difference in strength between the two of them was enormous. Humiliated by his defeat, the prince tried to surrender, but Rid refused and ordered him to stand up and continue fighting. Rid refused Rheasus's surrender and scolded him for wanting to give up after insulting his sick mother. He then pointed out that the prince had even fought while wearing protective equipment, questioning his honor and pride as the heir of Renarut. Rid continued pressuring Rheasus, refusing to accept his surrender. He stated that a prince should never give up in such a manner and challenged him to stand, saying that if he ran away from the fight, he would be remembered only as a coward, unworthy of becoming a great king. Provoked by Rid's words, Rheasus regained his determination, swearing that he would win the duel. Satisfied with the change in his attitude, Rid accepted the challenge, realizing that the prince's eyes had finally changed. Even after regaining his determination, Rheasus continued being completely dominated by Rid, who dodged every attack and knocked him down repeatedly. Seeing the enormous difference in skill, everyone realized that Rid could end the duel at any moment, but chose to continue fighting in order to strengthen the prince's spirit. The spectators realized that Rid was not merely trying to win, but to teach Rheasus a lesson. While the prince refused to surrender, everyone simply waited for the king's decision to end the duel. Farah realized that Rid was not trying to humiliate Rheasus, but to make him understand something important. Meanwhile, the others also began to notice that the boy could have ended the fight several times, but chose to continue in order to teach the prince a lesson. Even after being completely dominated, Rheasus refused to give up and continued attacking. Realizing that the prince would not lose his determination so easily, Rid concluded that he would have to prolong the fight until Rheasus finally exhausted all of his strength. Rid coldly responded to the provocations, stating that he was not a monster, but a true demon to Rheasus. He then delivered another precise strike, knocking the prince down again, and maintaining complete control over the fight. Realizing that Rheasus would not give up easily, Rid decided to change his strategy. Before continuing the fight, he asked whether the insults against his mother had come from the prince himself or whether someone had put those words into his head. Even while taking responsibility for the insults, Rheasus ended up revealing his hesitation. Upon noticing this, Rid concluded that those provocations had been influenced by Norris, confirming the suspicion he had held from the very beginning. Even with Rheasus refusing to give up, Rid decided to end the duel on his own. Before everyone present, he declared his surrender, completely surprising the court and the prince himself. After the duel, the king asked why Rid had decided to surrender. Calmly, the boy answered that the king himself should understand the reason, implying that his goal had never been to defeat Rheasus, but to teach him an important lesson. After the end of the duel, the king questioned Rheasus about why he had refused so many chances to surrender. Embarrassed, the prince admitted that at first, he had only wanted to avoid defeat, but that when he realized Rid was holding back, he continued fighting only to protect his pride. In the end, he sincerely acknowledged that he would never be able to defeat Rid and accepted his loss honestly. Then, the king turned his attention back to Rid and asked why he had chosen to prolong the fight instead of defeating Rhesus immediately, since he had enough strength to end the match from the beginning. While everyone waited for the answer, Rid realized that he would need to carefully explain his true intentions in order to convince the entire court. Before revealing his true reasons, Rid asked to speak only with King Elias, Queen Liesel, Prince Rhesus, and Queen Altea, keeping the explanation confidential. The king accepted the request and, after sending the others away, stated that he was satisfied and asked Rid to finally explain the reason behind his actions during the duel. Rid explained that before the duel, Rhesus had said he would send him back to Baldia in a humiliating manner. He then stated that a prince should never make that kind of declaration during a diplomatic meeting because such reckless words could provoke conflicts between nations and put the relations between the two kingdoms at risk. Rid explained that he could endure any insult directed at him, but he could not forgive the moment Rhesus mocked his mother for being gravely ill. Before the entire royal family, he revealed the offensive words spoken by the prince and stated that such behavior was completely unacceptable for someone destined to rule a kingdom. Rid declared that he would never be able to forgive the words directed at his mother, stating that it had been the greatest insult he had ever received. To him, offending a member of the Baldia family in that manner was unforgivable, which justified all of his actions during the duel. Upon hearing Rid's explanation, the king questioned Rhesus to confirm whether everything was true. Unable to deny what he had done, the prince remained silent, leading the king to harshly reprimand him for his irresponsible behavior. Overcome with anger, the king severely scolded Rhesus, reminding him that he had taught his son the weight carried by the words of a prince. Furious, he stated that it was shameful to insult a foreign noble and even offend his gravely ill mother, demanding that the prince feel ashamed of his own conduct. Without offering any defense, Rhesus accepted the blame. Because of this, the king declared that there was nothing more to discuss and, as punishment, drew his sword to execute his own son, determined to preserve the honor and credibility of the kingdom. Rhesus admitted that Rid had spoken only the truth and took full responsibility for his words. He then explained that everything he had done was to protect his younger sister, who was only 6 years old, stating that he would never accept seeing her sent alone to a foreign country or forced to leave her family so early. The king explained that Rhesus had acted impulsively and without thinking about the consequences of his words. He showed that, if he truly wanted to protect his sister, sending her to the powerful Magnolia Empire would be much safer than sending her to Renarut. Realizing that he had been manipulated and that his actions made no sense, Rhesus broke down in tears, overcome with regret. Realizing his own mistake, Rhesus knelt before Rid and sincerely apologized for offending him and for insulting his mother. While the king stated that the apology should come from the entire kingdom, Rid quickly tried to stop the formality, saying that this was already more than enough. Rhesus accepted that he should apologize officially on behalf of the kingdom. Before ending the conversation, however, he made one final request to Rid, that he take good care of his sister, Princess Farah, and make her happy. Surprised by the prince's change in attitude, Rid simply agreed to the request. Rhesus apologized to his father for all the trouble he had caused. Although he called him a fool, the king still seemed determined to punish him, even raising his sword, while Rid and the queen grew desperate upon realizing what was about to happen. Seeing the king about to impose a severe punishment, Rid panicked as he imagined Rhesus committing seppuku. While the queen begged for mercy, the prince himself accepted the punishment for his mistakes, asking only for one final wish before the sentence was carried out. As his final request, Rhesus begged his father to treat his mother better and love her the same way he loved Queen Altea. At that moment, Rid revealed that Rhesus had been deceived because the king had never stopped loving any of his wives. Realizing that the king truly intended to execute Rhesus, Rid became desperate and immediately tried to stop him. Desperate, Rid shouted for the king to stop immediately, making it clear that he had never asked for such an extreme punishment. He explained that his goal had only been to correct Rhesus's mistakes, not condemn him to death. Rid explained that he had never wanted to see Rhesus executed. His only goal in provoking him during the duel was to make him recognize his own mistakes and regret his actions. In addition, he reminded them that after the wedding, Rhesus would become his brother, and stated that he did not want to lose someone who would become part of his family. Rid asked the king not to make a hasty decision. He stated that he was willing to forgive Rheasus as long as certain conditions were fulfilled, and asked that his demands be heard before any punishment. After thinking for a moment, the king agreed and allowed Rid to present his requests. As the first condition for forgiving Rheasus, Rid asked the king to support a company from Baldia, explaining that trade between the two countries would bring benefits to both sides. The king immediately accepted the request, and Rid thanked him before announcing that he still had a second condition. As the second condition, Rid asked that the marriage between him and Princess Farah be maintained. Even after confirming whether that was truly his decision, the king accepted the request, declaring that the union would be made official as soon as Queen Rizel and Prince Rheasus also agreed. Before ending the conversation, Rid whispered one final request into the king's ear. After hearing it, the king smiled, accepted the marriage with his daughter, but decided to keep that matter secret for the time being, allowing only Rid to inform his own father about the decision. Rid asked the king to forgive Rheasus for his mistakes. When questioned about the reason, he explained that he did not want to lose the person who would soon become his future brother-in-law, believing that the entire confusion had been caused by the influence of others over the prince. Rheasus thanked Rid for his compassion and promised to start over from zero if he received that opportunity. Convinced that the prince had learned his lesson, the king accepted all of Rid's requests, but determined that everything that had happened during that conversation would remain secret. At the end of the conversation, Rheasus acknowledged that he would never be able to surpass Rid, neither in swordsmanship nor in character. As a sign of respect and reconciliation, the king shook Rid's hand, sealing the end of the conflict between the two families. After the reconciliation, Rheasus finally smiled in relief. While everyone left the place believing that the incident had been resolved, Rid noticed the unexpected arrival of Princess Farah, becoming curious about why she was there. Upon meeting Rid, Princess Farah made an unexpected request. She asked whether he would agree to face her bodyguard, Asura landmark, in a new duel. Surprised by the invitation right after his fight against Rheasus, Rid was left without a reaction for a moment. While Rid was facing Rheasus, the king watched the fight and was impressed when he realized that the young marquis was younger than the prince and was still using only a wooden sword. Convinced that Rid was a true prodigy, he began to suspect that the maid had deliberately prepared that sword to limit his strength. Suspecting that the maid had given Rid a wooden sword to limit him, the king confronted her. In response, she easily broke the weapon with her own hands, proving that it was only an ordinary sword and that the strength shown by Rid was entirely his own merit. To prove that she had not sabotaged Rid, the maid easily broke the wooden sword and pretended that it was defective. She then offered another weapon, but Rid refused and stated that he would choose his own sword, ending any suspicion toward her. Irritated by the maid's interference, the king left the place unconvinced. Shortly afterward, he realized that someone was watching him from hiding and ordered that person to come out of the shadows immediately. In secret, the king found a mysterious individual hidden in the shadows. Irritated, he stated that he had overestimated that person and ordered them to begin spreading rumors about Rid's actions against the prince, making it clear that he intended to use the incident for his own objectives. The king explained that spreading a few rumors would be enough to turn the nobility's opinion against Rid. Since many supported the engagement and would not want to see the prince completely humiliated, the idea was to make it seem as though Rid had continued beating Rheasus even after the king tried to end the duel, damaging his reputation before everyone. While Rid was still reflecting on the challenge proposed by Princess Farah, she insisted that he face her bodyguard, Asura landmark. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Rid asked the king to allow the duel, explaining that a new demonstration of his strength would be the best way to put an end to the rumors and clear up any suspicion that had arisen after the fight against Rheasus. When questioned, Princess Farah explained that she and her guard had lost sight of a certain noble, but ended up discovering a troubling rumor. According to the gossip, the Marquis's son had used his overwhelming strength to torture the prince and possessed a cruel and inhuman side. After hearing the rumor, the king questioned whether that was not an exaggeration, recalling that everyone had watched the duel. Even so, one of the nobles insisted that Rid represented a risk, claiming that if the princess married him, she would end up being forced to obey him. Faced with these concerns, the king decided to hear the full explanation and asked everyone to follow him. Princess Farah revealed that the entire situation was part of a plan created by her and her bodyguard Asuna. She explained that Norris was behind the rumors and that the opposition faction had already begun to act. To prevent Rid from falling into that trap and to restore his reputation, she proposed a new duel between him and Asuna as a way to prove his true character before everyone. Princess Farah explained that the plan was to gather all the nobles once again, so that Rheasus could deny the rumors about the duel. Since that alone would not convince everyone, Rid would also face the renowned Asuna in a new battle, demonstrating his true strength and proving that the accusations against him were exaggerated, thereby restoring his reputation. Upon hearing the plan, the king praised Princess Farah's intelligence, stating that she had inherited her mother's wisdom by finding a solution capable of preserving the honor of everyone involved. Rid was also impressed to discover that this entire strategy had been created with the intention of protecting both him and the royal family. Following Princess Farah's plan, Rheasus gathered the nobles once again and publicly admitted that the duel had only dragged on because of his own stubbornness, making it clear that Rid was not at fault for what had happened. Despite the confession, some nobles remained suspicious, showing that those words alone would not be enough to end the rumors. As part of the plan, the king announced a second duel between Rid and the princess's bodyguard, Asuna Landmark. Before the nobles who still distrusted him, Rid would have another opportunity to demonstrate his true strength and prove, once and for all, that the rumors about his cruelty were false. While preparing for the duel, Asuna showed excitement at finally facing Rid, believing that this would be a unique opportunity. At that moment, Norris appeared to speak with her, surprising her, and making it clear that he had an important matter to discuss before the fight began. Norris tried to convince Asuna to cooperate with his plan. In exchange for benefits for her and her family, he asked her to make Rid suffer during the duel and drive him to give up on marrying the princess. Even faced with the proposal, Asuna made it clear that she had no intention of accepting such a betrayal. Asuna refused the proposal without hesitation, stating that she no longer had any connection to the Landmark family and that she would not betray Rid. Irritated, Norris tried to intimidate her, saying that she would never be able to return to her former family and that she was wasting her own future, but she remained firm in her decision. Asuna immediately drove Norris away, declaring that she was proud to serve as the princess's bodyguard and that she would never accept any offer to betray her or harm Rid. Before leaving, she also warned him that if he ever insulted the princess or her master again, she would not hesitate to face him once more. Before the duel began, Asuna and Rid exchanged glances and showed excitement for the confrontation. Both awaited the fight with anticipation, treating that battle as an opportunity to measure their true abilities. Before the new duel, Asuna revealed that she had noticed Rid had been using a physical enhancement technique throughout the entire fight against Rheasus, something almost no one else had noticed. Rid was surprised that she had discovered his secret, but Asuna stated that it was not cheating, only proof of the prince's immaturity for failing to notice his opponent's ability. When the duel truly began, Asuna drew a second sword, revealing that she would finally fight with all her strength. Seeing her combat style, Rid was surprised, while she apologized in advance, warning him that she would not hold back if she ended up hurting him. As soon as the second duel began, Asuna advanced with impressive speed, surprising Rid with her very first movement. Realizing that he was facing an opponent much faster than he had expected, he understood that this fight would be far more difficult than the previous one. Using her incredible speed and two swords at the same time, Asuna tried to attack Rid's blind spot in a single instant. However, he noticed her movement in time, barely escaped, and prepared to counterattack before she could complete her offensive. Taking advantage of a small lapse from Asuna, Rid saw an opening and jumped to attack her from above. However, she immediately realized his intention, remained calm, and prepared a response to his counterattack. After escaping Rid's attack with a somersault, Asuna paused the battle for a moment and made an unexpected request. She begged him not to hold back during the fight and to show all of his true strength, saying that she was having more fun than ever and wanted to face Rid at his maximum power. The second duel began at high speed, with Rid pressuring Asuna from the very first moments. As they exchanged intense blows, she surprised everyone by asking him to restrain his strength a little, explaining that defeating her with all his power would go against the true objective of the plan created by Princess Farah. During the intense exchange of blows, Rid managed to launch Asuna into the air, but she turned the impact into a perfect somersault and landed on her feet without losing her balance. Impressed by his opponent's skill, Rid was momentarily surprised, while Asuna simply smiled, showing that she still had much more to reveal in that duel. Even while praising Asuna's agility and acknowledging her strength, Rid made it clear that this was exactly why he wanted to face her without restrictions. Determined to see the bodyguard's full potential, he declared that he would make Asuna reveal everything she was capable of doing in that battle. Using an ability to measure mana, Rid discovered that he possessed far more magical energy than Asuna. Realizing that both of them were strengthening their bodies with magic, he concluded that he would win if he prolonged the battle until his opponent's mana was depleted, exactly as he had done against Riesis. Meanwhile, Asuna, excited by the duel, simply asked him to show even more of his true strength. As he analyzed the fight, Rid smiled when he realized that Asuna was about to experience the same strategy he had used to defeat Riesis. The two returned to exchanging blows at high speed, while Princess Farah cheered excitedly for both of them, unaware that something unexpected was about to happen. As the duel continued, soldiers and spectators began encouraging Asuna, asking her to defeat Rid and defend Renarut's honor. However, not everyone shared that enthusiasm, and some of those present showed concern as they realized that the situation was becoming increasingly intense. As the duel continued, the spectators began cheering more and more for Asuna, encouraging her to defeat Rid. At the same time, Rid's allies asked permission to support him as well, and they received authorization, making it clear that both fighters would have the support of their companions during the battle. Rid's supporters finally began cheering for him, encouraging him to put all the training he had done into practice and win the battle. At the same time, his father watched the fight in silence, but made it clear in his thoughts that he believed in his son and wanted to see him emerge victorious from that battle. Even after being defeated, Riesis watched the duel and was impressed when he realized that Rid was treating Asuna with much more seriousness than he had shown when fighting him. At the same time, his mother began fervently cheering for Asuna's victory, while the bodyguard herself, energized by the crowd's support, realized that the fight was becoming more and more exciting. Rid, on the other hand, was already beginning to show signs of exhaustion under the intensity of that battle. While facing Asuna, Rid realized that her dual sword style was extremely difficult to follow. In addition to her speed and unpredictable movements, the way she alternated her attacks made it seem as though she was constantly changing positions, preventing him from finding an opening to counterattack. Rid praised Asuna's incredible skill with two swords and admitted that Riesis never had any real chance against her. He then revealed that he had already faced even stronger opponents, and for that reason, he could not afford to lose that duel. Upon hearing this, Asuna smiled, even more excited to continue the fight. As she increased the intensity of the battle even further, Asuna began pressuring Rid, who started being pushed back. Realizing that something was not right, he once again used his mana measuring ability to confirm a suspicion that had been forming during the fight. When he measured the mana again, Rid realized that Asuna still had more energy than him. At that moment, he concluded that she used body enhancement far more efficiently thanks to her experience, making it impossible to defeat her simply by waiting for her mana to run out. Asuna stated that the next attack would decide the outcome of the fight and warned that Rid would not be able to dodge. Without hesitation, he accepted the challenge, promising to stand firm and face the strike head-on, giving everything he had in that decisive clash. Keeping his promise, Rid remained motionless and raised his sword above his head, concentrating all his strength into a single strike. He then advanced with determination and launched a powerful frontal attack against Asuna, betting everything on that decisive charge. The instant the two attacks collided, Rid's wooden sword snapped in half. Before he could react, Asuna appeared in front of him and declared that the fight was over, making it clear that she had achieved victory in that confrontation. Even with his sword destroyed, Rid did not give up and advanced for one final blow using only the remaining piece of the weapon. The attack managed to hit Asuna, completely surprising her. Then, exhausted, Rid collapsed to the ground, believing he had finally ended the duel, while Asuna, still standing, admitted that his final move had caught her off guard. After an extremely balanced and intense duel, the king officially announced Asuna Landmark as the winner of the battle. Even in defeat, Rid was applauded by those present for his impressive display of skill and for managing to push the powerful bodyguard to her limit. After the victory was announced, Asuna helped Rid stand up and sincerely thanked him for the duel, saying that it had been a very long time since she had experienced such an exciting fight. While the two spoke in an atmosphere of mutual respect, Riesis' mother hurriedly approached, calling out to Asuna and Rid, indicating that a new event was about to interrupt that moment. After the battle, Princess Farah praised Rid, saying that the fight had been incredible and that he had managed to pressure Asuna far more than she had imagined. Happy with the compliments, Rid smiled, while Farah showed even greater admiration for his strength and skill.